Good afternoon, Warband. Oh, wow, we got a lot of you guys active. So, we got Real Names Not Given, Spider Spectre, Dr. Dree, Matria, For No Reason, Conimal Kraken, Mystery, August Lion, David Graham, and Manic the Manic Mechanic. Welcome everyone. Yes. Took a while to get to it, but we are back with Think Before You Sleeps. Continued deep dive into his hidden past. Before we get too involved, if you wish to donate and want to get past YouTube's 50%, donation link is pinned at the top right there. Their comment should be read out, and if it's not for some reason, I'll make sure it is. Now, we are currently on archived episode 21. Oh, Matria? Oh, nice. Alright, so, before you sleep, archived episode 21. And actually, before I forget, yeah, we're speeding this up to 1.5 times because he tends to ramble. So we're just going to start it off sped up right away because we might take 3 hours to get through all three, but I'd rather not take 1 hour per video. Let's hop into it. Oop, volume up. And, welcome Sergeant Grinch and Random Gen Z Bastard. Alright, now we're all here. Let's get into it. Let's go. Episode 21.
J. And you might not recognize who that is, but by name, but you may recognize one of the experiments. See, they did a bunch of experiments on childhood reasoning to see at what age do children get certain mental abilities, or cognitive abilities is probably the correct word for that. And so one of his experiments that was really famous is he took 2 cups of water. One was a wider cup, and one was a taller cup. And he filled them up with the same amount of water. And he took kids of all different ages, like some ranging from 3 to 10 or so, or maybe 3 to 12. And he'd ask them, which cup has more water in it? And when they were young, they would say, well, the taller cup has more water in it because it's taller, even though they had the same amount. And then as they get a little bit older, they say, well, I don't know. And then the oldest ones will say, well, they're both the same. It looks like the same to me. And so you may recognize that. You may recognize all the other things of reasoning, like children, if you have a ball and you put a ball under a blanket, if they're young enough, they will recognize that the ball is not there anymore. And then you pull it out and they're surprised. It's the same thing you do when you play peekaboo. When you cover your eyes, the child doesn't know that you're there anymore. They think you're gone. And so when you uncover your eyes and, well, you're there again, well, that's great. And so certainly you can create little games out of childhood reasoning. And certainly, I'm sure Piaget had a lot of fun with it because his experiments are all like ridiculous, at least in terms of children, which probably was ridiculously fun. But one of the things he would say is that if you're a child, the first way you learn is you learn through your body. And in fact, in kinesiology, you have a couple different terms of that. Kids learn proximodistal, cephaloclaudal. Cephalocaudal. That's the right way to say that. Well, who cares? You probably don't know what those words mean anyway. So, well, what?
Yeah, once again, insulting his audience. Now, do I know what proximal cephalocaudal means? Well, no, not offhand. Doesn't take a couple seconds to go research that. Yeah, proximal cephalocaudal. Trend of infants learning to use their upper limbs before their lower limbs. Proximal trend is the prenatal growth 5 months. Cephalocaudal development describes the general growth pattern of organisms to develop areas near the main neural area, typically the head, earlier than areas of the body that are more distant. This can be seen in human fetuses, where the head is the first body part formed. Once the body is formed, the hands develop before the feet. Cephalo is used to describe things related to the head and brain, while the term caudal is used to describe the body. So cephalocaudal development can mean head-body development in which the head develops first. Was that really so hard, Sean? Like, instead of insulting your audience and saying, oh, you probably don't know what that means, could you have maybe gone, well, in case you don't know what that means, here's the definition of it, and here's how it relates to this particular topic? You know, instead of insulting your audience, maybe educate them, give them a refresher. Well, at least we got through 2 minutes before pausing this time. But it looks like this one's going, well, at the very least, his opening rambling is about childhood psychology, his favorite topic. Let's see what he means by give it up anyway.
What those do mean is that you learn proximal, which is closer to your heart, distal, which is away from your heart. So you learn closer to your heart first.
Excuse me? Hold on. Hold on, hold on.
A couple different terms that kids learn proxima distal, cephaloclaudal, or cephaloclaudal. That's the right way to say that. No, well, who cares? You probably don't know what those words mean anyway.
Proxima distal cephalocaudal.
Right. So, well, what those do mean is that you learn proximal, which is closer to your heart, distal, which is away from your heart. So you learn close.
I'm going to double check that. So, proximal distal. Close or distant from the main mass of the body. So, yeah, the heart. Main mass is going to be. Main mass will be like your upper body chest area. Alright, I guess we'll just keep going.
Closer to your heart first, away from your heart second. So you're going to learn how to move your shoulder, which is closer to the heart, versus the fingers, which are further away from the heart. And cephalocaudal, which means head to toe. So you learn closer to the heart, away from the heart, head to toe first. And those are all going to be very physical actions. So it's one of the reasons why, well, when you have a kid, or maybe when you were a kid, though you may not know this, there's a reason why there's childhood sports. Because when children play sports, they get to act out all these really complex philosophical principles at a very young age, and then you don't have to sit there and explain it to them. They just know what's right. This is kind of the way you make a child easy to manage, is you put them through experiences like this as opposed to sitting there and reasoning with them. Well, they don't understand reason. They're 5 years old. You have to explain to them with a game, or you have to explain it to them with physical activity, or a very, very basic language. And of course, sports or team sports is where you start doing it. Actually.
That's actually interesting thing. So, when you can't reason with someone, you need to teach them physically. You know, there's a lot of people that think, like, you know, you can reason with a child, they're logical, they can understand why things should happen. It's like, well, no, apparently not. I wonder if the same thing can apply to many of the mentally decayed people, because, well, let's be honest here, child sports are something that is getting phased out these days. Like, people no longer really get those childhood experiences due to, oh, they're competitive, oh, people feel bad. But if you take out that kind of physical interaction, does that damage their ability to reason and understand things? Perhaps, maybe even discipline. Maybe discipline for younger children has to be a little bit more than a stern talking to, or any sort of talking to. Maybe there actually needs to be some sort of physical component to the discipline, perhaps. Perhaps. Let's keep going.
You probably want a little bit older than 5, maybe about 7 or 8 before you enroll in a team sport. Otherwise, they're a little bit too selfish to get the idea of the group. And they have to be selfish because they're 3 or 2 and stuff like that. Well, I guess they do play a little bit by the time before, otherwise they never socialize. So, but certainly once they start getting 5, 6, 7 or so, that's when you start putting them into team sports. And the reason you do that, because in a team sport, you have a series of people with different abilities. So if you're going to play baseball, you have someone who pitches the ball, you have someone who catches, you have a first baseman, a second baseman, a shortstop, and a third baseman, and then you have the outfielders. Those are all different skills, and you have to play differently based on where you're positioned in the field. But even though you do different things, you're all working towards the same goal, which is to win. And of course, if you get that right, or hopefully if your parents got that right, hopefully if you were enrolled in team sports when you were younger, you learn how to interact with other people in adulthood. Which basically to say, if you're working for any sort of company, you're going to have to work with people who have different roles. I mean, let's say I work for a big electric company. There's going to have to be somebody who builds the building that we work out of. There's going to have to be someone who maintains the cars that we drive out in. There's going to have to be someone who knows specific types of electricity. Well, I might specialize in other types of electricity or other types of electrical wiring. I might not know all of it. I might have to defer out or refer out, if that's the correct word, to somebody else that's on the team. There has to be someone who knows how to manage the team. There has to be someone who knows how to go out and get business. These are all different positions with different skill sets, because you can't just know everything, or you can't do everything even if you know different fields. Sometimes people do know quite a lot, but you heavily hamper your ability to be, well, ultra successful unless you can rely on other people to be very, very good at what they're doing. And so, of course, that is all built from childhood. If you have someone building that from the time they're 6 years old, they're going to be way ahead of the game, as opposed to someone who never built that. In fact, they may be so far ahead, the person who never built it will never catch up.
So you need to play team sports as a child to understand that people need to have different roles in order to contribute on the larger scale. Now, I might not have a lot of memories from that age. I think that when I was like, the earliest sport I can remember is like t-ball. Did not play very much of it, honestly. Don't remember much. But I do remember a lot of childhood pickup soccer where it's just like, hey, which team needs another player? Okay, that's the way you're kicking the ball. There's not much of role differentiation or specialization unless you're the goalie. You're just part of a mass of children kicking the ball in a specific direction, and you have to figure out who's on your team. But you don't even do that. Like, there's really not much of, hey, let's all like have complex passing abilities. No, it's far more, hey, kick the ball in this direction, and if you lose the ball, someone else will pick it up.
Think before you burp up zinc. Vomiting face, vomiting face, vomiting face.
Thank you, Frost. Oh. Yeah, so, I mean, I see where he's coming from. Like, so far, aside from that dig at his audience for not knowing, like, a word that rarely comes up outside of the medical field, or a couple words, again, not an expert in childhood psychology or basic development, so as far as I know, what he's saying is accurate. But at the same time, his analogy of the big electric company, I don't know, like, what role is he picturing himself in that you need this sort of team dynamic and ability to rely on others? Because, I don't know, the fields I work in, you're expected to just do what you're told. Like, do what you're told, and you just don't stress over the decisions that are above your pay grade or really aren't your responsibility. Yeah, it's like chat's got a couple like childhood game stories. Yeah, oh yeah, Spider Spectre. Yeah, hide and seek and tag staple game. Like that, I'd say is very basic. I guess the team sports. That's such a curious element to bring up. Team sports. Ha. Well, let's just keep going. Maybe he's going to elaborate on this.
There was a little rule in sports, is that if you didn't build a certain set of skills by the time you were 13, you would never be a professional athlete. Like, if you didn't know how to throw a ball, dribble a basketball, and swing a bat, you would never be a professional athlete in any sport, because everybody else is so far ahead of you that you'll just never catch up.
I mean, that makes sense. But that's if you're going for professional athletics. And let's be honest here, professional athletes, they're they're overpaid. They're playing a game for entertainment. Like, yes, they're playing well, they're playing at a high level of physicality, but they're only playing because, well, a bunch of people watch them, and primarily because, well, it was their childhood. Like, I don't think it's coincidence that most of the people who are really into sports hockey, again, Canadian, most people into sports hockey, they tend to have played hockey when they were younger. The guys who watch golf, they play golf. I guess that's why most guys don't watch women's basketball. But like, a lot of it is, hey, I played this as a kid, so I'll watch it now. I'm really not much of a sports guy myself. Although it could explain the more universal appeal of wrestling to guys, because guys, competitively or not, most of us wrestled as kids. Hmm. Hmm. I don't know. I guess we'll just keep going for now.
Once you know how to swing a baseball bat and you have 7 or 8 years to think about that, you're going to improve even if you only play a little bit. So that person who is so far behind is not going to have time to catch up. And so you're going to act things out physically before you understand them mentally. And this may just be the case for adults too. Certainly we have long time practices, which is what this episode is about, of sacrifice. In fact, every single religion I've read has some type of sacrifice embedded into it. Even like the spirituality stuff, like the Indian stuff, they all have sacrifice. And I think there's a reason for that, which is because society is based off of sacrifice. We don't have stuff like a microphone that I'm talking into, or a computer screen that I'm looking at, or a cell phone, or cars. We don't get that without delay of gratification. We have to say that I'm going to give something up right now that's expedient, and it could just be your free time. Certainly being lazy is very, very fun for a while. And I'm going to give up something right now that I think is valuable so I can get something even better.
Personally, I don't know about lazy being fun. I'm busy. Like, there is always stuff to do. Sleep is amazing. Like, you don't really appreciate how much sleep is just awesome until you don't get enough of it. Why am I expecting the simp to advise men to sacrifice for my society? Well, we'll see where he's going with this. Right now, he's just laying the groundwork for the discussion being about sacrifice. And yes, most religion does require sacrifice. Like, heck, the whole Cain and Abel thing, that was a dispute over, well, quality of sacrifice, largely. Cain gave a very shitty sacrifice. Abel gave a better one. God liked Abel's more, and Cain was like, well, screw this. Matria. So what does, I think before you sleep, sacrifice for society, of which existence he does benefit from? Well, we'll see where he gets it. Because if he's saying, like, free time, you sacrifice your free time to talk into the mic. I mean, is this what I would consider a sacrifice? I mean, technically, is it? Like, is me meeting with you here and having a live stream with you a sacrifice? I don't know. I mean, you have to sacrifice time regardless. There is no way to not sacrifice time. It's just a question of what you do with it. We'll see where he's going with this.
In the future. And that's what sacrifice is for. Actually, I'm going to go a little bit Jordan Peterson on you, for those of you who have not heard his.
Oh, God. Another quote from Jordan Peterson. Yes, let's listen to the pill popper who raised a whore. Yes, let's quote him like he's some great intellectual thinker and not part of the reason society is so screwed up to begin with.
Biblical series, because he tells a couple really fantastic examples that I'd like to repeat here. There's one example, which is a story that I believe is not his, is a story on if you want to capture a monkey, here's what you do. You get a very long neck vase. That way the monkey can't or that monkey can put his hand in it, but it can't pull it out very easily. And then you're going to put a bunch of rocks in that vase. That way he can't just pick it up or break it, because he might do that to get away. And after you put a bunch of rocks in it, you're going to circle with treats, and then you're going to put treats inside of the vase. So it's going to pick up all the treats and eat them around the vase, and then it sees the stuff in the vase, or maybe it smells it, and it's going to stick its hand in the vase and pick up the treats. Of course, if its hand was open, it just goes right in. But now, because it wants to grab one of the treats, it's got its fist closed, and it can't pull its hand out of the jar. And apparently, monkeys do not have the ability, the cognitive ability, because this is probably some really complex stuff, which is why we are the only species of animal that does what we do, is because we figured this out. And we figured it out in a very, very big way, and somebody made sure that we remembered it. Because again, it's in every religious practice that's mainstream. And even some of the smaller ones.
You know, funny thing, I've heard the same thing in the book Where the Red Fern Grows as a raccoon trap. You put something shiny into a hole that's big enough for the raccoon's paw to fit open but not closed, and then you hammer a couple nails in so that they create that sort of one-way trap. And that will trap the raccoon because it won't let go. Maybe it's the same for monkeys. Honestly, couldn't say. Not really a specialist in animal behavioral psychology. But we'll keep going. We'll keep going.
And so it can't see itself sacrificing the parts to save itself. So what you can do is going to try to pull its hand out with the treats in it. It's not going to be able to do it because it has to have its hand open. It has to sacrifice the goods. And you're just going to pick it up and capture it. Now, of course, it's a very kind of a simplistic example. You would probably figure that out if you had.
Do you think you can capture a monkey just by picking it up? Monkeys aren't exactly weak. What you think that? I mean, what kind of monkey are we talking here? Not all monkeys are equal. Like, there's a big difference between trying to capture a capuchin versus a chimpanzee. Okay. Monkeys will absolutely mess you up. But I guess let's assume for the sake of it is like, hey, if you wanted to take out a monkey, a way to get it to be pinned in the same spot is to do this. Well, see where he's going with this.
A very narrow neck vase and you say, oh, I just got to open my hand up. And that's it. But of course, the reason I'm giving this example is because there are more complicated problems that this relates to. There are more complicated problems that this relates to that are, well, pretty much exactly the same thing. There's probably, as this is for all of us, there's probably something that you are holding on to that you would be better off if you got rid of it. But of course, it's something that's valuable, so you're not going to get rid of it. In fact, I have an example that I think works quite well. This might apply to a lot of people because, well, addiction is very, very common. I have an uncle who's an alcoholic, and he's probably also a heroin addict, and he's probably also a marijuana addict. He's probably a lot of things that I'm certainly unaware of. I tend to stay away from him because, well, I know a lot of addicts. And one of the contingencies of being an addict is that you have to have people, eventually, you're going to fuck your life up so much that you have to have a codependent around you to help you survive. Because what's happened with my uncle is he lost his marriage. He cheated on his wife because his wife wouldn't have sex with him because he was drunk all the time. And, fair on her. I'm not going to comment on that marriage too negatively in her disservice, because she was probably right. But then she did marry an alcoholic, so I guess she's certainly guilty as well. But so he lost his marriage, which means he was quite depressed. And so when he became depressed, he started drinking more. And when he started drinking more, he lost his job because he would sit and show up hungover all the time. He'd show up late. He would show up drunk. And so his boss actually fired him. And of course, because he was fired because he wasn't married anymore, he couldn't rely on his wife to pay for his way, because both my aunts and uncle, in this case, had really nice jobs, and nice enough jobs to be able to afford a house in California. And so she kicked him out, so he's living on his own, and now he couldn't afford his rent, so he went homeless. And then he kept driving drunk, so he lost his car, and now he basically is immobile and needs everybody to take him around. Of course, like a bunch of idiots, people still do. And of course, once he cried enough to say, oh, I don't have anywhere to live, I'm so miserable, oh, woe is me, somebody took up the towel, if that's probably not the right way to say it. Somebody picked him up, and
someone played Captain Save a Ho for his uncle. Like, but let's just be honest here. Like women get by on this strategy all the time. So, yeah, someone played Captain Save a Ho for his uncle, and would consistently if you cried to enough people. Which, well, that's not super common for men. Well, personally, I know two men within the past little while who've, they've needed a bailout. I know at least one of them's getting bailed out by the government right now. The other one, I don't know, but I know that he's not in a very good position. But let's keep going here. Maybe he's. I think I know where he's going with this, but let's let him get there.
and help them out. That's a
Oh, Save a Joe. Oh, Spider Spectre. That yeah, that makes sense. Captain Save a Joe. Okay, that makes sense.
problem because in an addict's mind, if they say, "Well, I can't afford drugs right now because I have to afford it to live," which some people will choose the will choose the drugs, and those are people who really hate themselves. And of course, I think my uncle hates himself, which is why he does what he does to himself. I think that's why a lot of people become addicts. And so it's like, hey, I had to pay rent before, but now I don't have to pay rent before, or now I don't have to pay rent anymore. So I can just take all the rent money I was getting and spend it on drugs. And he's been getting away with this because he just, once one kicks him out, he just goes right into another. He's been getting away with this for about 10 years now, where he just keeps moving on from one person to the next, telling them, saying, woe is me, he guilts them. And he can guilt them because they're afraid of losing him. Again, they have their hands stuck in that jar and they're not willing to let go. And the only way they will actually get him back is if they let all the crap go and pull their hand out of the jar. Of course, that means they might lose something, but maybe you figure out, maybe you just tip the jar over and then pour the truth out that way. Maybe you can figure that out. Who knows? But the only way it's going to happen is if you pull your hand out first. If you got your hand stuck in that jar, well, then you're going to, again, get clubbed over the head by whoever's trying to capture you. In that case, that's what's been happening to my family so far. I don't know how much longer they'll put up with it. I hope not so much, because well, I don't really like my uncle anyway, so I guess that's beside the point. But it might be something similar like that. That'd be an example of, I don't want to lose my brother, I don't want to lose my son or whatever it is, so I'm going to keep holding on to it, not let go. I think that's a fairly good example. Certainly there are things like that for me. Now, well, I'll leave it at that because I wouldn't be able to think of it off the top of my head. I tend to get rid of things I don't have use for quite quickly. I've gotten fairly good at this concept because I've been doing it for a couple of years.
You get rid of things that you don't have use for quite quickly. Like MGTOW? Like the audience that built you up? I mean, that's the thing. In hindsight, I mean, it is very much like a woman. If you let them talk enough, they tell on themselves. Should have been, like, I guess put simply, he's not loyal. We can discern from that statement right there that Sean has no sense of loyalty. If you're not useful to him, he ditches you. Plain and simple. And he's done that a lot. Because, yeah, sure. Hanging on to something valuable to the point that it destroys your life, yeah, that's bad. But if you're going to ditch something the instant it becomes inconvenient for you, well, that's like how a woman does it. Living opportunistically. Sean is giving a full endorsement of that. If something is inconveniencing you, if it is restricting your movement at all, let it go. Doesn't matter what it did for you in the past. Doesn't matter. You don't need any sort of loyalty. Don't need any sort of sense of family or brotherhood. Just let them go. Let them go. Cut them out of your life and move on. Because you're number one. And you know what? That can work. That can work. That can be good advice. But as soon as people realize that that's the kind of person you are, that you're only with them from benefit, and that as soon as things are rough or as soon as you're inconvenient, they'll drop you like a hot potato because they don't want to be tied down for even a second, how much can they trust you? Because maybe he'll get to this, but this is a big part of why sacrifice is important. It builds trust. If you will sacrifice for somebody, then they will trust you more. And they'll be willing to go to higher lengths and go a bit further because they can trust you. They'll take bigger risks because they trust that there's something there. If people can't trust you, then why would they do anything to benefit you? Why would they sacrifice for you if they know that you will not sacrifice for them in turn? Let's keep going.
So it's hard to think about the top of my head. Like one of the things, oh, here's one, because this is one I've already solved. It doesn't sound like it's very real because I've already done it. But I was very much so not getting anywhere with any sort of skill that I needed. And the big problem that I had was I'm really intelligent, but I don't know how to work. Sorry, I didn't know how to work, because I do now. I do quite a lot of work now. And it was a problem because I was just basically, nothing was happening. I was working like 1 hour a week teaching yoga, which is not a way to make money. You need to work like 25 hours a week, and you make a shitload of money per class. But 25 hours a week is roughly like a 50-hour week, because you have to
1 hour per week. He worked for 1 hour a week teaching yoga and was surprised that he wasn't making a lot of money. I'm actually stunned. Sorry, no, not that one. There we go. Like 1 hour a week. 1 hour a week. 1 hour a week teaching yoga. I spend more time than that on streams like this. 25 hours a week? Like, between all the streams I do, both the ones I host and the ones I guest starred, I'm pretty sure that I'm putting in 25 hours a week into a YouTube hobby. And this guy was doing 1 hour a week teaching yoga, which he thought was making him an income, and then was surprised that he wasn't making money. Let's keep going.
drive back and forth between classes. Like, you never get classes back to back. You're always running around. So it makes my life quite hectic. But when I started out, I was only working a very, very little bit because I was afraid of taking responsibility. I wasn't willing to give up my free time. Of course, if I was going to progress, I'd have to let go of it. I'd have to give it up. And so I figured that out several years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago or so.
You have to give up your free time. That was revolutionary for you. You realized, hey, I'll have to give up free time if I want to make money. You have to give up time to make money, period. I don't know if there's anybody that can make a living on 1 hour of work per week. Okay, Trudeau, hey, I'm pretty sure that Trudeau does have to work more than 1 hour per week, even if he's just driving around from A to B for photo ops. I don't know. I don't exactly know his itinerary, and the family connection I had that might have known his itinerary is no longer employed by him. So we'll see. Let's keep it going. Giving up free time, like you're comparing an addict family member as being something you need to give up to free time. Really? Free time. Free time. Not connections, not friendships, not periods of time that you enjoyed being around others, not a project that gave you a sense of accomplishment, just free time to do what? To watch television? What were you doing with your free time? Or were you just laying back on a couch or in bed doing absolutely nothing for hours on end? I don't get it. Maybe he'll explain more. Maybe.
I didn't actually wasn't teaching yoga that long before I figured it out. It's kind of essential, or else you basically die. What else? Let's see. There's a second part of this. Let me faithfully steal from Jordan Peterson yet again, because this is his idea, but it's such a powerful one too. Is that, well, I read the Bible, so I can kind of expand on this. So I'm going to put a little bit my own take on this.
He's read the Bible, like cover to cover, or you just picked out passages. Well, I'm sure he won't elaborate on that, but let's keep going.
And like I said before, all these different religious texts have some type of sacrifice, and when they have sacrifices, you will read that there are certain rules and certain ways that you make a sacrifice. All in Greek mythology or Indian mythology, Christianity, and all the Judeo-Christian religions that are involved in that, there's some type of right way to make a sacrifice. And today, contingencies of Christianity.
Oh, too much. Yeah. Great, you're being unfair. His watching TV in free time is doing his research. You know what? You're right. I forgot that this guy has a lot of knowledge for reality television. I mean, was that it? I was thinking, like, saying, like, oh, I had to give up my precious free time. I suppose that I had a hard time letting go of my free time sounds a lot better than I had a hard time letting go of my reality television. Whatever he was doing in his free time. But yeah, could very well have been like he was just laying in bed watching reality TV, or on the sofa, or in a chair watching reality TV for hours on end. And he'd much rather be doing that than teaching yoga. Commenting reality TV is the best way to cultivate a large female audience. You know what? Yeah, I think you're onto something there, Lion. I think you're onto something there. Let's continue.
Is that if you're going to sacrifice something, it has to be unblemished. It has to be perfect. It has to be something that you could have used yourself. Like, you're not just going to sacrifice that crappy vase that's over there that you don't give a shit about. It's got to be something that means something to you. And so one of the traditional sacrifices was you sacrifice an animal. Now, this might be like a cow that might, I think, I've talked to different beef farmers because I'm interested in how stuff is made. And I think the average cow is about 2,000 pounds, and you get about a fourth of that in meat. And so in this case, you're going to sacrifice 500 pounds of perfectly good meat that you could eat and feed your family with. And well, that might feed you for quite a while. Depends on if you can dry the food, it can feed you for a long time. But at the very least, it's going to feed you and everybody else in your community for quite a while. If you had refrigeration technology, that would feed you probably well over a year, maybe close to 2 years if it was a single person. So that's a big deal to sacrifice something like that. And it has to be a big deal because it has to mean something. It has to be something that's valuable enough for you to care. For the reason that if you, again, to embody the fact that there's going to be other shit that you care about, you're going to have to sacrifice the things that are great. So of course, why not sacrifice the cow? That's the least you can do. But the second part of it is, think of it this way. Now, we're around New Year's, and we're around a time where people are trying to make different changes. They're trying to make different vows. And of course, a lot of these vows are around weight loss. I'm going to lose 50 pounds this year. That's a pretty realistic goal. You want to lose about 1 pound per week, or maybe at most 2 pounds per week. You start losing 20 pounds a week, or start losing 20 pounds every 2 weeks or so, you're going to quit. It's too much to do that, unless you've got this extreme willpower, and you probably will still quit. I think everybody breaks at some point if you make things too hard. So the big problem here is that you're making this vow, and you really have nothing to hold it in and hold it in place. You're saying, you've made this same vow every single year. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Me personally, I just make vows all the time. I say things constantly. I don't sit here and wait till New Year's to make the vow, which certainly is what I think people should be doing. But this tends to be the time of year people do it, so let's talk about that. There's nothing holding them in. So you say you're going to lose 100 pounds, or say you're going to lose 50 pounds. You go to the gym for a week, you eat healthy for a week, or eat healthier for a week, and then you just give up. But think of it this way. If you gave up, God, how much would that cost? I'm not too knowledgeable about how much meat costs, but let's say it costs $7 per pound. 7 times 500. So let's say for that sacrifice of that cow, you spent $3,000 or $4,000 of your money. Now you've got some investment. In fact, one of the big parts of training, in certainly being at a gym, is that the more money people invest, the more they stay.
Okay. So what are we saying, that like the sunk cost fallacy gets people to stick around? And I mean, that does make sense. You pay a lot for a gym membership. You tend to, I mean, would you tend to use it more? It makes sense that you would. I don't exactly have any stats on this. We'll see where he's going with this.
And I've been working at a particular gym for many years, and as well as shitloads of other places, because that's just how it works. And this place would give us statistics, and they would give us, okay, well, here's our average member, and typically what you'll do is you'll put in all these data points, and if you're going to cancel your membership, they ask you why, because then we can reevaluate how we do our sales. So what would happen is, if they don't really get any sort of guidance, they leave within a month. If they get some guidance like group fitness, they leave within typically 3 months. If they get personal training, which costs vastly more than those other two things, they stay for about 6 months. The more money you have and the more skin you have in the game, the more committed you're going to be. And so if you're going to make some sort of vow and you're not used to doing that, you're going to have to give up something. What is going to be the price of your failure? What's going to be something that you're going to give up if you don't succeed? What's going to keep you in line? And I'm not going to tell you that, because that's going to have to be something that's personal to you. I don't know you. I'm talking to you.
Okay, but that's sort of the same deal. Like, well, if I don't do this, then I give this up. Well, who's holding you to that? Like, if you're just saying, like, oh, well, if I don't do this, then I give up X, Y, Z. Okay, who's going to take that from you? Who's going to referee this? Who's going to count what qualifies as giving up versus not giving up? And don't most gyms rely on people, you know, not coming in, just having a gym membership that sits there idle while the person never actually uses it? I'm pretty sure that if every single person who had a gym membership tried to use all 30 days at the gym, they wouldn't be able to because there'd be no equipment. It was at a gym for years and he looks like that. Very true, David. Yeah, we've seriously, showing your face, Sean, was an absolute atrocious idea. Like, maybe you've made more money off of it. I don't know. But maybe it boosted you in the algorithm. Maybe you got a bunch of ad revenue. Don't know. But it certainly makes people looking at your old content now think, wait, this guy went to the gym for like a decade and he looks like a guy who's never even looked at a gym. Anyway, let's see if we could wrap this up. Minute and a half left.
Over a computer screen, you're gonna have to sit there and say, what do I need to give up? What's the usually it's the thing you don't want to give up the most. So for me, in my case, a couple years ago, it was my free time. It was some other things too. Like I've had some problems with fear, and I've given up that. But as best as I can, you don't think you can ever really give up fear. You get more used to it.
Free time and fear. That's it. I gave up my free time and fear. I've given up projects, groups, and games that I have had years of investment in, if not at the very least months of investment in, to pursue other things simply because I didn't have the time. Free time and fear? That's considered a sacrifice? Really? Almost done.
I've given up. I've given up certain skills I really wanted to learn. I wanted to learn how to draw, but that just I didn't have time to do it. And well, that's enough examples of that. So I've given up something. But so what are you going?
You can't give up something that you never had. If you never had the ability to draw, if you never even tried teaching it to yourself, you can't give it up. That's like saying I gave up. I gave up becoming a professional hockey player. It was never in the cards. I never wanted it. And even if I had, like, what did I put towards it? Nothing. I invested nothing in it. Heck, I've probably invested like more into drawing than you have. And is that my primary career? No. Did I learn how to do it? Yes. But what you gave up, like, what, you had plans to learn how to draw and you decided, nah, I'm going to do something else, and that's my sacrifice? Because, oh, I could have been a great artist if I'd just had sacrificed it. Like, no. No, I'm willing to bet you wouldn't have been. Wrapping this up.
To sacrifice? What's the thing you want to sacrifice? At least that's probably where you need to go, and that's probably where you start first and see what happens. Yes, you're going to lose something, but you're going to get something if you do a honest sacrifice. If you're able in this story, if you're trying to be Kane, if you're trying to give something that's stupid. I'm going to give up again this coffee mug that.
Yeah, giving up something stupid like a skill that you never possessed.
I've had for a year. I don't really care about it. I'm going to put it on fire, and then that's going to be my sacrifice. If you're going to sacrifice stupid shit like that, don't play the game. You're going to have to sacrifice things that are big, things that are really huge parts of you, because those are the things that are going to reap the biggest reward. You invest a little now to get a big growth later if you're doing so properly. And I think that's enough about that. So thanks for watching. If you like this video, please hit the subscribe button and the like button too if you're already subscribed. And well, just both if you're not either at this point. Also, really, really helps if you share the video. I'd really appreciate that. And well, that's it. Thanks for.
Well, you can't like, share, subscribe, or comment on his video anymore because he deleted it. So, yeah, if you have any further thoughts on this, you're going to have to settle for liking, sharing, and subscribing, either on this particular video or once I get around to chopping everything up and actually putting it in individual segments. Because I am way behind on that, and I do apologize for it. But we will take a brief intermission, load up the next one.
One of the ideas I like promoting is
Yeah, there's a nice visual right there. Jeez. Didn't want to just get that off the screen for the moment. And instead, we're going to have a brief intermission with Ava while I grab another drink because I definitely think I'm going to slow down the next one a little bit because he's talking just a little too fast. So we'll go with composition 218. I'll be back in a moment. One more. Those weren't too bad. We've definitely gotten worse lucks of the draw there. But we shall continue with, is this number 22? Archived video 22 of Think Before You Sleep, aka Sean's deleted archives. It's always the man's fault. Slow it down a little bit. Playback at... Now we'll go with 1.4 and see how that gets us. Let's begin.
one of the ideas I like promoting is an idea called self-knowledge. And self-knowledge is a practice in understanding your virtues and understanding your faults. Now, the virtues are easy to do. It's easy to admit what you're good at. It's an important activity. You should be doing it frequently because that's how you determine what behaviors should be repeated. Why do people like me? Oh, they like me because of this. Okay, so let me repeat that behavior so that other people will like me and I will get more of what I want because I'm providing value.
What? Do we really know why other people like us? I'm not a mind reader, chat. Like, I'll admit, I don't know why a good chunk of you are here, or why you think that this is extremely well. Like, I don't know what I'm doing right. I really don't. I appreciate you being here. But short of you outright telling me, I don't know why this works for you. So, like, what am I doing right? I don't know. I might know what skills I'm good at. I might be able to compare myself to others and say, yeah, I'm objectively better by XYZ metric. But does that necessarily correlate to me understanding why people like me? I think that's a bit of a leap. I mean, I could point out things like, hey, this is why I like me, which is why I dislike me. But I would think that everyone would have different subjective reasons as to why they like or dislike somebody. And I think that that saying that you know why people like or dislike you, arrogant and foolish. So let's see where it's going with this. That's only 30 seconds in.
That's a pretty easy thing to do. The harder thing is to look at your faults and see what have I done wrong. It's hard to even admit fault a lot of times, and especially if you've been abused as a child, it might be against your survival instinct to admit you're wrong because in times that you've been wrong, your parents beat you. So of course you're going to lie to well, you're going to lie to other people, which means a lot of times you'll have to lie to yourself. And sometimes people lie to themselves so much.
Wait, hold on. Wait, something about your parents beating you? Hold, we're going back 30 seconds. Like, my brain just had a brain fart for like 10 seconds there, and I think I missed the plot point.
That's a pretty easy thing to do. The harder thing is to look at your faults and see what have I done wrong. It's hard to even admit fault a lot of times, and especially if you've been abused as a child, it might be against your survival instinct to admit you're wrong because in times that you've been wrong, your parents beat you. So of course you're going to lie to well, you're going to lie to other people, which means a lot of times you'll have to lie to yourself. And sometimes people lie to themselves so much that they believe it and they
Huh. I guess we'll file away being abused as a child for doing something wrong is the reason why people cannot admit fault. Hmm. I guess we'll add that into the archives of things that Sean thinks are true. Are they true? Maybe, maybe not. Personally, I don't remember getting my ass beat by my parents. I definitely knew that was a possibility. I'll still admit when I fuck up. Like, I don't know, just I've just always associated like coming clean with better outcomes. Like constantly trying to blame shift and not taking responsibility for stuff is just worse overall. I don't know. But trying to blame people's behaviors purely on some sort of childhood abuse or trauma, yeah, I'm starting to smell a bit of projection here. But let's keep going. Let's keep going.
they can't tell what's the truth and what's not the truth. And of course, if you're doing that on a regular basis, you're going to be lying to yourself about things that are really key and really important. And so this episode is clearly about a female doing this or about women doing this because it happens quite a lot. But of course, this could be reflected back on you. You should everything I'm saying that women should do, you men should be doing this as well because our lives will be.
Everything you're saying women should do, men should do as well. What have you said women should do in the past couple videos? I mean, I guess I'd have to look back and double check because it has been a while. But let's see. Let's look back. Okay, so we've got "Give It Up," which is the last video, primarily directed at men. Get the basics right, referring to diet. I believe that one was mostly criticizing men. Red pill fuel. There was a lot of female criticism there either. Don't be a loser. That's definitely directed at men. Gillette. I remember any female criticism in that one either. Get it done. And universal suffrage. Why no longer talk to other... How many videos back do I have to go? Like, what? Single mothers are making kids socially awkward. Like, 11 videos ago. Like, what? Four episodes ago. What? 3-4 episodes? 3-4 live streams ago. That's when you offered, like, criticism to women. So what the heck are you on about? That everything I'm saying women should do, men should do as well? What? You have been primarily criticizing men throughout these videos. Like, unless maybe it's an offhand comment about how, well, men are stronger than women and we need to acknowledge that. Acknowledgement of basic biology. But, okay, chat, maybe it's just been a while? Am I missing something here? Oh. Y'all fill me in, because it has been a while, but let's just keep going.
Worse if they don't do this. This is this is a genderless strategy. This is a strategy that works for everybody, and you have to do this. Otherwise, well, hopefully you'll be very, very lucky if you're not practicing the strategy, because in all likelihood, if you do not know what your faults and virtues are, you will be prone to make mistakes and prone to be, well, not valuable to people. So you might have seen this. I'll put this video in the description for those who have not seen this, but there's a Terry Crews video that's been going around. That's an advertisement for a company called Safe Horizon, which is a company that helps women in domestic violence cases. And so in this speech, he says that his first memory is watching his dad hit his mom as hard as he could. And then he tells the story of how abusive his father was. And if you've ever been in any sort of abusive situation, I have, because I had an abusive father. Not nearly to the...
Okay, I guess we can add that to the little things that Sean has revealed about his wife. We can add... Well, you know what? That actually makes a lot of sense. Abusive father? Researching into childhood psychology? Blames a lot of behavior on childhood trauma? See what other details he's going to expose himself with here.
That Terry Crews' father was abusive, and certainly heavy sympathies go out to him because, well, of course, it wasn't his fault. So he had no play in this. He was just a child. And of course, every child does not have agency over what their parents do. It's always the parents' fault for how the child turns out. And so what will happen in these situations a lot is that you'll have no idea what you're coming home to. Sometimes you'll come home and the abusive parent or parents will be perfectly loving, perfectly caring, and perfectly fine. And sometimes it's the worst day ever. Sometimes you'll have the shit kicked out of you. And of course, this happens with, well, I mentioned before, a very famous YouTuber named Boogie2988. He's, I don't watch his actual content. Sometimes I watch his movie reviews, but what I do watch him do is I watch him recover from his child abuse and watch him go through some of his personal therapy outside of his actual therapy, because he'll mention some of this stuff on his channel. And so he would get the shit kicked out of him by his mother. And then, confusingly, because you're a child, you don't know any better, you don't have any experience, and plus your brain is like small, so you don't have any intelligence either. So he would get the shit kicked out of him, and then his mother would say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Let's go to McDonald's. Let's go to Taco Bell. Let's go to Pizza Hut. Let me make it up to you." And so you live in these really odd relationships and these really weird relationships. And likely she was only doing that so when she kicked the crap out of her kid, that he wouldn't tell anybody, so that nobody would help him. Or because, well, you can't kill kids these days, so you have to save some face if you don't.
Oh, let's be honest. You can kill kids these days if you call it a post-birth abortion. Women get away with killing their kids all the bloody time, so I don't know what you're on about. Although, this was, what, like 4-ish years ago? So, hey, maybe in 2019 it was a little harder to kill your kids. But I'm pretty sure in 2023 you can get away with killing your kids and writing it off as some sort of just mental break or whatever. You'll get a slap on the wrist. But I think it's curious that he says that kids have no agency. Because what about then children who are outright abusive towards their parents? As now, I haven't heard many of this, but I have heard more than one tale of a kid being a physical threat to their parents. Like throwing things at them, willing to hurt them, going for knives. Like, is that the parents' fault? Yes, in a roundabout way you could say because they lack discipline, but can you not also say that, yeah, the child is choosing to do this? Because if you have parents that don't discipline their child, are children just so naturally violent that they require discipline in such a way? I'm not sure. I have not put a lot of study into this. I don't know, but it raises interesting questions, having more data points. I guess we'll just keep going.
Like your child. And so in this case with Terry Crews, I don't know if it was exactly like that. I think it was more so the way he presented it is it was pretty clear. His dad had pretty regular behavior. So I guess that's kind of good. It's better to know that you hate the person than it is to not be sure, than it is to have this confusing message where I'm good sometimes, I'm bad sometimes, and you don't know how to predict me. And I think it's more often the case where abusive people are highly unpredictable, which is why, well, that's abuse in itself. You want people to be predictable. You want to know how they're going to be in certain situations. And so if I show up to a friend's house, or if I'm with a wife, or if I'm with a girlfriend, or if I'm with any family members, I'm going to be I should know how they're going to act in most situations.
You think a relationship with women is going to be predictable? The only consistent thing that you're going to have in a relationship with a woman is chaos. Let's just keep going.
It shouldn't just be random and unpredictable. That's not something you want to be around. And so the way he presents this story is that it's all his dad's fault. His mom had no agency in this. And I got to say, whoever you pick as your relationship partner, it's your fault.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to call cap on Terry Crews for that. Like, okay, regardless of the pick your partner thing, it was not the 1810s that this was happening. Like, I might not know how old Terry Crews is, but I'm pretty sure that he's younger than 50. Meaning that this was like the 1960s, 1970s, maybe even 1980s that this stuff was happening. Help was a phone call away. The boys in blue would gladly come running to deal with such an issue. To say that a woman has no agency in a relationship in let alone current year, the past half century, that's disingenuous. But hey, blame the man. But I suppose that's what this video is about. So let's keep going if Sean's come to a similar conclusion.
Whatever they do. Now, of course, this is a red pill channel, so this may not apply to you, but if you're on the fence at this point and you pick the wrong partner, it is your fault. If you get married in a society where women can destroy your life and a woman destroys your life, it's your fault.
Or if you make them your girlfriend, right? If you get into a relationship with a woman that destroys your life, it's your fault. Again, I wonder what Sean of the past would say about Sean of the present if he knew that, if he didn't know it was himself. If he didn't know it was himself, would his past self approve of his present self? Clearly, his present self doesn't approve of his past self because he deleted the content, so I'm willing to bet no. I'm willing to bet no.
You made the decision. You invite. We have vampires, and vampires can only attack you in your own home if you invite them in. It's a metaphor. So if you're inviting the vampire in, that's this abusive bitch, or that's this false accusing cunt, or divorce rape bitch, or if you invite a man in who beats the shit out of you, it's your fault.
Yeah, there's a thing called acting and pretending and hiding shit. Like, most women do not go around saying, "Hey, I'm a false accuser. Will you let me into your home and your life and make me a member of your family?" Now, usually they make sure that you can't run away, that you're locked down by either emotions or financial obligation or the court system, and then they pull the bait and switch. Like, that's why I was like, wedding cake is the fattiest food there ever is, because the instant a woman has her wedding cake, she immediately blows up like a balloon. Oh, 2 hours to the Green Man. That's been scheduled. All right. Well, let's keep going. We will definitely get through this before Chronic goes live. But let's keep going.
And, a little bit of sympathies if it's the first time, a little bit of sympathies if you don't have children. But as soon as you bring someone else's life into this problem, as soon as you bring your own kids into this problem, where now your kids are being beat, or at the very least, the kids are seeing you beat, because what's going to happen is they're going to model that behavior. So even Cruz mentioned this in his speech, is that I see violence as a tool to get what I want, or as a tool to manage my anger. So I'm going to use that, well, in my own life. So that might mean I'm going to be very violent at school, which he made no mention to, but he did mention that he was violent with his daughters. He would scream at his daughters like they're a 30-year-old adult. Now, fortunately, he seems to have some self-awareness about this, so he might have actually fixed the problem. Just because.
Isn't Terry Crews... Sorry, I gotta look up, because if he's gonna put an example like, well, this happened to me, he's like, how'd that work out for you, Terry? Let's see something here. American actor, former NFL player, who has a net worth of $25 million as of December 2022. So you turned out so badly that you have a net worth of $25 million. More money than most people who had stable families will see in their lifetime. Heck, I wish that I had as abusive a father that I could get $25 million. I wish that my emotional control was so poor that I could get $25 million. I'm sorry, you're asking me to take pity on someone who's probably made more money than I'm going to see in my entire life? Jesus. All right. All right. Let's keep going.
Because you know what the problem is doesn't mean you actually fixed it. But certainly, at least admitting that screaming at a child is wrong is a step in the right direction. So maybe he's figured this out.
What the heck are you supposed to do with the child? Like, I'm sorry, you have someone who goes out, like you have a parent who goes out, works all day, and then comes back to someone unreasonable who won't listen to logic or reason. And at that point, if you've just pulled like a 10, 12-hour shift, you probably don't have the mental facilities capable to, talk them down, to invent some kind of game to teach them right from wrong. Like, no. You just want them to shut up. Like, come on. Would it be better if he backhanded the kid and sent them across the room? The yelling is a precursor to the violence. The yelling is a step up. What, are you never supposed to scream at your kids? Are they never supposed to be able to push you so far that you go anything beyond just the ideal Hollywood parent? No. Guess what? You're human too. And kids have no respect for the boundaries of adults. They will absolutely push you beyond your limits because they don't have that level of empathy required. So, no, like, if the worst that you do as a parent is scream at your kids, I say you're doing pretty well. I say that by and large, you're doing pretty well if you've never actually found a need to beat your kids. And honestly, some kids need a beating because they just don't get it otherwise. But clearly has his own issues with his parents, so not exactly an unbiased source that came from a healthy family. So let's just keep going here. See what else he puts together.
But he learned that from his parents. He learned that from his mother and his father. And so he didn't give his mother a free.
No, he learned from his father to beat his children, to beat his wife. Like, that's what you learn from the father. Like, learning to scream is actually, a step in the right direction if you want to go from physical violence to just verbal violence. And honestly, considering how many people think that words are violence these days, maybe more people need to take a good backhand or two as kids just to learn the difference between verbal and physical violence.
Pass. Because maybe she didn't know. Maybe the guy just changed. He wasn't like that when we first got together. Yes, he was.
Oh, maybe the guy just changed. Maybe she didn't realize. Oh, really? So you admit now that people can change from the start of a relationship to partway through? Why not say that the woman changed? No, it's only the guy not seeing the woman, not. It's only the woman not seeing the abuse of the guy, not the guy not seeing the woman. Maybe. Well, whatever. Let's just keep going.
They're always like that when you first get together. And it probably is an effect of how attractive they are. This is why you want to have good friends around you. This is why there's that story in the Odyssey where Odysseus wants to listen to the sirens. So what he does is he has his friends tie him up to the mast of the ship. And he says, if I ever say to untie me, I want you to tie me tighter. I want you to not let me fall victim to the siren, because a lot of times people fall victim to their relationship partners, especially if they're hyper attracted to them. So you want a good set of friends around you to pull you away from stupid shit like that. And in general, everywhere else in your life, good friends will be that you talk to them about your day, and you update them on what's happened this week if you see them once a week or whatever it is. And you talk to them because they're there to say, hey, well, I think this about what happened here. Here's where you could have improved, or hey, this is a really fucked up situation. You should get out. You should quit this job, or you should break up with this chick, or whatever it is. Good friends will do that to you. Do that for you. And so what could have happened is that she had good friends, and they noticed an abusive tendency with the father, like maybe he's being overly possessive, maybe he's trying to get rid of her friends, so she's easier to abuse, things like that. They always show that shit before you get into a deep relationship. There's always something weird about them. There's always some sort of sign that an abusive partner will throw out, because you can't hide everything. Like, even the perfect criminal still leaves mistakes when they commit a murder. So let's.
Well, no, because then they're not perfect. The perfect criminal does not do it, because that's why they are perfect. You could have said extremely skilled, competent, elite. No, the perfect criminal would not leave a trace. Like, the perfect criminal is basically a silent assassin ranking on Hitman. Okay? That's the perfect criminal. Like, if they left mistakes or traces that could be followed, then no. No, they were not. Yeah. No. Yeah. Matria. Friends can pull from making mistakes. Yeah. Like, maybe your audience members that see you committing YouTube career suicide and changing up your principles. Yeah, they could pull you back. Oh, wait. When they do, you call them haters and ignore or deride them. Huh. Fascinating how that happens. Fascinating.
Give her a pass. Let's say she didn't know. But I gotta say, what about the second time he beat her? What about the second time he abused the kids? What about the second time he had a screaming fit? Because I gotta say, if I was ever a person to get married and my partner did that, I would be gone. Is she ever?
Really? You can say that now. You say that now when you're single and have a clearer head. When you're not as blind as the rest of them. Guess what? Tim Pool can say that he would absolutely stand up and try to stop a woman from being assaulted on the subway. Yeah, you can say that on the internet. Everyone can, and everyone would. Well, maybe not everybody. Some people might actually be truthful and admit, yeah, no, I'd probably fuck it up. But saying that you do such a thing in an emotionally complex situation, well, the only way to know whether or not you're telling the truth is for you to be in that situation. And that's going to mean that you're going to have to marry Brittany Venti, have kids with her, live with her, find out that she is irresponsible and abusive, and then what? Break up with her, leave her, give up half your stuff for it? I'll be honest, Sean, I don't think you have that level of integrity. I just don't. You have not presented someone of high enough integrity to convince me. Let's keep going.
Ever threw anything at me, if she ever tried to hit me with a bat or tried to stab me with stuff. By the way, I've heard stories that this is a prime reason why I do not want to get married, is because if this ever happens to you,
then what are you doing with Brittany Venti? She's saving herself for marriage. So why the heck are you her boyfriend? Like, let's be honest, chat. The only relationship status one should be with Brittany Venti is either you are married to her, you are her fiance, or you have no relation to her. There's literally no point in being the boyfriend of Brittany Venti if she's not giving it up for anyone except her husband. Then you either better be on track to be her husband, actually her husband, or you might as well not be in a relationship at all with her, because at that point you basically just have the "I'm your biggest fan" card. Let us keep going.
you don't really have that much of a defense. She can own you. She can ruin you. She can go into the bathroom and beat the shit out of herself and say you did it. And you are stuck in a situation like that if you ever, well, not only that, but she can and will use your kids as victims against you. She'll make all these complaints. She'll say that you're an unfit father and she should get full custody. And so she will own you. Because I've heard plenty of stories where women have done this from people in my own life. I've heard a story where multiple times a guy I knew was stabbed by his wife with pens and pencils. She would put cigarette butts on her kids. Now, of course, I didn't know this guy too well, but you shouldn't marry a bitch like that. Of course. But this is not the only story I've heard. So women will throw things, they'll use weapons, and they can't outright physically beat you, but if they, pick up a knife, pick up a gun, pick up any sort of blunt object, they can meet your strength pretty well. And because of the feminist courts, because of the Duluth model, men are not allowed to fight back and actually defend themselves. So she can get away with pretty much whatever she wants. Again.
I mean, let's be honest, with the Duluth model, don't fight back to defend yourself. If you're gonna fight back against a woman who's trying to hurt you, you're better off putting her in the ground. Because you can't be a lifelong debt slave to someone who's 6 feet under. Fortunate, but that is factual.
A perfect reason to go red pill. So what about the second time he beat her? Or the second time he beat her kids? If it happens more than once, if she says, oh, well, I can't leave, oh, he's going to change, he's getting better, or she's just waiting for things to happen, then you are just as evil as the person doing the beating. You are just as bad because you sat there, watched your kids get hit, let yourself get hit in front of your kids, and you said, I'm going to do nothing about this.
And no, here's the difference. The man who does that versus the woman who does that. The man who does that, he's going to lose more in the divorce, in the breakup, than she is. Like, if a woman is not willing to leave the man for the sake of her children, even when she has a massive amount of cash and prizes and sympathy waiting for her, then yeah, she doesn't care. Now, the man who doesn't do that is like, well, if I divorce her, then the kids are going to be under her custody full time, and I'm going to be paying for her to abuse my children. To say that it's the same regardless of gender is a false equivalence, and you should know better. Like, you mentioned the Duluth model. not 1 minute ago, and now you're drawing an equivalence between the two. Get your shit together, Sean. Holy crap.
One of the things I like about religion and one of the things I like about Christianity is that you don't get to just say, I'm going to take a step back and do nothing. It is your obligation to fight evil. Otherwise, you are just as complicit as the people who are evil. If you let evil grow, you're just as much at fault.
Weren't you the same one that you needed to increase your capacity to do evil? Weren't you the same person that said you needed to develop your shadow and made a whole video on the topic? What is evil to you, Sean? Because you've got all this moral high ground and grandstanding, but after all this, there is absolutely no concept of your morals. It just seems to be whatever sounds appropriate for the topic I'm discussing here. I get no sense of who you actually are or what you actually stand for.
Of course, I mean this right back at the Red Pill channels as well, right back at the MGTOWs. If you let this stuff happen, it's your fault for letting it happen.
What? No responsibility without authority. If you let what stuff happen? What, if you let the government get away with stuff? If you let society abuse men? What is the fault of the MGTOW channels for not stopping society? If I don't have authority over something, I take no responsibility for it. Maybe you'll clarify in the next minute or so. Let's see.
Because who else is going to take responsibility for it? They certainly aren't. And one of the things I don't like that much is the complete passivity, or the large amounts of passivity in MGTOW channels. Is if we just sit there and let things happen, whatever bad things were going to happen to us if we got married are going to happen to us anyway.
No. No. Not signing that state contract prevents all the ills that come from signing that state contract. You don't suffer decades of debt slavery and giving up half your shit to someone you don't sign the contract with if you don't actively stop it from happening to other men. No. We're going to let shit fall apart because it's going to fall apart. And if it doesn't, well, then freaking miracles can happen and hell has frozen over and you may as well buy a lottery ticket in every single lottery because the odds are astronomically low. But to say that men who aren't actively fighting the current system, putting themselves at risk, that they're still going to suffer the same consequences as though they got married? You are wrong. Objectively wrong. Any logical man listening to what you just said right now would agree that what you just said was absolutely stupid. See how much worse it gets.
They will find ways, evil will find ways to ruin our lives if we sit here and do nothing. They will find ways to tax us. They will.
Really? Do you even have a solution? Or are you just saying, hey, other men who aren't me, you need to figure out a solution. You need to sacrifice to implement it so that I can gain benefits because we are all in this together. And my contribution is going to be telling you to do something. Let's keep going.
Find ways to accuse us. They will find ways to get rid of our jobs. They'll say, well, we can't have men working jobs because a woman should work that job. Or whatever shit they're doing in other countries, like you can't work as a white person in South Africa because black people are more populated in that nation. They'll think of shit like this if we sit there and do nothing, which is why I'm always an advocate for doing something, and that might be getting rid of universal suffrage. That might be at least saying no, or at least in these situations where these bitches...
Saying no to what? What exactly are you doing to get rid of universal suffrage? It's been 4 years. What have you done, Sean, to get rid of universal suffrage? Made one video about it? Oh, such a brave political action. Such a great step forward to ending universal suffrage. You made one video arguing the case. Holy wow. Like we are astounded by your sacrifice of making one video and giving up your precious free time. What are you doing, Sean? You're quick to talk about how other people need to sacrifice, but what are you doing?
Let their kids get beat, you can say, hey, it's not just the man's fault, it's your fault too. And so it's your job to fight evil. Now, I want to spend the last part of this video talking about the actual program he's promoting, because it's always a complaint.
Yeah, look. Women, if you're in a relationship with an abusive man, the cops are on freaking speed dial to remove that man from your life. And you have a network of systems supporting you in doing such a thing and making sure that you can subsist off of his money and the government's and the money of all other men for the rest of your life. But you're going to equate a woman who refuses to deal with her abusive husband to men who refuse to associate with an abusive government system? No, MGTOW are the equivalent of men who are like, hey, this person's abusive. I'm going to do as little as I can to support them. And you're saying they need to give up more? Like, what, are you saying that a woman should marry an abusive man and have kids with him and then just try to change him more actively? No. You're making false equivalences here and being disingenuous with what you're saying. This is downright horseshit, and you know it. Let's keep going.
So hard being a woman. Things are just so terrible for me because nobody wants to help. Nobody ever believes me. By the way, I've said this in other videos, but everybody believes a woman when she says she's been raped. And it's only been so recently where women are not believed because of all the rampant amount of false rape allegations. I mean, and look in the past couple of years, have any of these big rape accusations been true? No. The only one that was true was one where they had clear evidence where a bunch of guys found a passed out woman being raped behind a dumpster from this guy on some swim team. That's the only one in the past couple of years that's been a major case. It's actually been a legitimate case of rape. Otherwise, we have Mattress Girl, we have the Duke lacrosse chick, we had that chick who accused that guy who was a football player who was being scouted by professional teams, and she went to jail for 6 years, and she got $750,000 in government money to make up for the fact that she lied about the rape allegation. Or we have the Brett Kavanaugh hearings where it's like, maybe Christine Ford didn't get caught, but we have like 4 other women who admitted they lied about being raped by Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah, apparently Justin Roiland's been found not guilty of his accusation too. Now, he's still been dropped from everything he was involved in, but apparently that he's been found not guilty on those charges. So 4 years later, stuff hasn't changed. Still not my responsibility to deal with it.
For political reasons. So maybe men are a little bit skeptical, but for the most part, women are instantly believed when they claim cases of domestic abuse and domestic violence. And of course, everybody sprints to help women every time they've got a problem. So the idea is, we have nowhere to go, no one to help us. How many fucking women's shelters are out there where you can go? In fact, even during this speech, Terry Crews says, I don't give a shit if we go on the street. I would rather be on the street than with this guy. And she still didn't leave. And so in this case of Safe Horizon, this is one of those. Now, I will give Safe Horizon, the program he was promoting, a little bit of credit, because when you look at the section on child abuse, they tell you to look for certain indicators that your kid's being abused. And I think that's actually a pretty positive thing. At least they got that right.
What are those indicators? What are those indicators? You know what? Let's look it up. Let's look this up. Like live research. Safe Horizon, right? The nation's leading victim assistant. Specializes in New Yorkers. Oh yeah, I'm sure nothing can go wrong here. Yeah, big donation page. What we do. Q&A. Let's see. Looking for stuff on lawyers. Why should a survivor sue? What if there is no evidence of what happened? Evidence, or what we call corroborated evidence or corroboration, is sometimes needed and sometimes not needed. Typically, abusers don't abuse their victims in the presence of anybody else. It can be hard to come by. Examples of this include witnesses who survivor spoke to, notes, diary or journal entries, text messages, emails, letters, and photographs. What if the abuser who caused harm passes or passed away? Although you cannot sue a dead person, you can sue their estate if they have one. The estate must be open and have a personal representative. Yeah, I'm not seeing any of these resources of indicators to look for. Maybe they've changed in the past 4 years. But if that's there, it's certainly not accessible from the front page. So I'm guessing either they've changed in the past 4 years, or Sean looked very deeply into this website. And given what he's admitted to in this video, he probably has a reason to.
But outside of that, they don't get that much right. Of course, it's clearly an organization only for women, because when men get abused, nobody gives a fuck when men get abused. It's you're on your own. Not only are you on your own, but people are fighting you, and people are attacking you for being the guy who would be abused. Because the reality is, if you weren't aware of this, women abuse men just as much as men abuse women. It's not like 70-30 or whatever. It's not. It's about 50-50. Just as many women who are abused will flip around to just as many men who are abused by their female partners. But of course, the feminist agenda is to say that men are never abused by women, because that doesn't get them an advantage in the courtrooms. Men always have to be guilty so I can get full custody, so I can get child support, so I can get alimony, so I can get all this help I don't deserve. And one of the big issues I had with this website is that they're promoting this idea called, or this law called the Violence Against Women Act, which I believe is up for renewal. And one of the contingencies of this act is that they have rape shield laws. Now, rape shield laws make it so, and this goes for almost everywhere, at least in America, and this goes for a lot of other countries as well. Rape shield laws are, you can't bring up a woman's sexual history as evidence in the case of a rape. Now, why would women fight for this? Of course, this is probably pretty obvious to you guys if you've been around the red pill community a while, is that women want to fight this because if people know their sexual history, it lowers their sexual market value. If we know this chick's a huge slut, well, then all the guys that are in her community will not want to date her.
I think it's not just that, although that is probably a factor. I think it's also that if it's exposed that a woman has a history of going to bars and getting into a relationship with skeezy dudes and probably has a couple STDs, then people won't feel as bad for her and are less likely to believe her on her word alone. Like, if the woman with a body count of 2 claims she was assaulted, she has a lot more credibility than the woman who has a body count of 200. That's just how it goes. But why should that be something that's protected? Like, surely you wouldn't hide a man's past of physical altercations. Like, if a man, wait, I was supposed to say, you're going to get very different results. If, hey, this man committed physical assault. Oh, well, what does he do for a living? Oh, he's an IT worker. He doesn't even go to the gym. He probably hasn't been in a physical altercation in his life. Versus, well, what's this other guy's history? Oh, he's an MMA fighter. Yeah, he regularly resorts to physical combat as part of his profession. Yeah, if you're looking at an assault charge from either of those two guys, you're probably going to think that the MMA fighter was far more likely to commit the assault than the guy who probably hasn't squashed anything bigger than a bug in his 30 plus years on the planet. David Graham, and you can't bring up past false allegations. Don't know if that's specific to this law that's being opposed, but I wouldn't be surprised. God, this is one of the longer videos. Let's keep going.
Though, honestly, there are so many other people around each other that you probably wouldn't even be able to know anyway of who this chick was if she wanted to keep her sexual history secret. They wouldn't know about the case. She would just have to not say anything about it. So the reason this law was created was because they thought that women would not come forward with rape allegations, or 85% of rapes are not reported by the women because they're afraid to come up. And so whatever feminist statistic was out there. And so the idea behind this rape law was that more women would come forward if they knew that their sexual history couldn't be brought up. Now, of course, where the hell are these benefits for men? Men don't ever get laws like this, especially in a place where everybody believes you. Everybody wants to help you. And so if you get this female privilege law, which I'm going to post a little thing in the description because there was an argument done by
description which no longer exists on your website or on your channel because you got rid of it. It probably exists on the MGTOW Mirror archive because they did copy the comment section, but I don't have that up right now. Either way, you deleted this resource off your channel, so unless you posted it in one of the videos that hasn't been deleted yet, it's gone. Congratulations.
a law school that doesn't have very many.
So, no, I actually find that people who are trained to fight are less likely to commit assault. Not always, but mostly. And that is fair. Suppose that's fair. But you gotta admit, the public perception would be that someone who commits violence on the regular is far more likely to commit violence rather than someone who has not committed violence in the past. Regardless of whether or not the statistics line up, I would think that public perception would be that one who is more familiar with violence is more likely to resort to it. But I suppose that is debatable.
Any views on it, and I'd like to get this more out there because it has a pretty good discussion about rape shield laws. And one of the things they brought up was that as far as it goes, there have been no higher incidents of rape accusations or women coming forward about rape since the rape shield laws have gotten into place. However, there is a lot of convenience in these laws for if I want to accuse somebody falsely of rape, I now have a way of dismissing evidence because my sexual history can't be brought up. So let's say I like a little S&M. Let's say I'm a masochist and my husband or my boyfriend or the guy I'm cheating with is a sadist. And so we do a little rough trade. I get some bruises, I get some bite marks, I get some burns, or whatever BDSM people do. That's what I think they do. And I want
Yeah, some bruises, a couple lash marks, hot wax, rope bruises. There's various options that would look damning, which is what makes BDSM extremely risky to practice. Because that is, it's bad enough that they can, but when they can do it and they've got physical evidence of the bruising, it's dangerous, guys. Like, the kinkier your girlfriend, the more shit she's going to have against you.
accuse this guy of rape, and I'm going to say, well, look at this bruise, look at these bite marks, look at these burns. This was obviously a violent altercation. And they might say, well, of course it's a violent altercation. She willfully engaged in S&M. This is a behavior that she volunteered herself for. That is relevant information, but that's information that you cannot bring up in court because of rape shield laws. Of course, there are plenty of other ways this law can be abused because you always want to think, what is the most evil possible person going to do if this law is being put in place? And that will help you determine if it's a good law, because certainly these laws can be used for quite a bit of evil to shield deviant behavior, to shield people who are false accusers from having evidence brought against them. In all the guise of more women will come forward if this is the case. Women already have had every single advantage in rape accusations for, I don't know, at least 100 years or so. And I'll say it again, my extreme sympathies go out to Terry Crews because he was the victim in this case. He was the true victim. His mom wasn't the victim. He's like, I've got to protect her. I've got to become the adult because she's obviously a dumbass and she can't defend me. So I need to be the one who's the protector, which is always a terrible situation to put your child in. Your child is not an adult. They should not be your fake husband. They should not be your protector. They should not be the one who's, making sure that you don't overdose on drugs and making sure that you get to work. This is not an appropriate role for a kid. So the fact that he said in his speech that I just need to protect my mom already means his mom is failing as a parent.
Yeah, well, moms are still going to get like majority custody. So so what? Mom failed as a like the mom failed as a parent to her son. Holy shit! Stop the fucking presses.
And so, anyway, sympathies go out to him because it's not his fault. However, the organization that he's promoting is not necessarily a helpful organization. Like I said, it doesn't. It makes it seem like women are only victims of domestic violence and never actually committed. They have some racist articles that say, well, black women need to be believed just as much as white women, or black women need to be valuable. Black people are already valuable. The way you tell who's in power is you ask who cannot be criticized. How come it's the case that black people can say all these slew of racial slurs against white people, but as soon as you say one racial slur against a black person, you can be thrown in jail? Black women are already certainly well valued. Oh, there is one thing that I saw on this website that I did find interesting is that abuse doesn't. Of course, this is on the male side. If the man was abused, he doesn't get excused of abuse. I find this funny and ironic because every time a woman commits abuse, she is always, well, she had a very fucked up past. Her dad beat her mom molested her. All her childhood was so terrible. So the only way she could make up for that is by creating abuse. Like I was just watching a documentary on a false rape accusation by ABC, where this guy went to jail for 4 years because this woman falsely accused him of rape. And the reason she accused him of rape is because she was having an argument with her friends. So she said this guy raped her because she didn't want her friends to hate her. Bitch. And she went to jail. He went to jail for 4 years. She went to jail for 1 to 3 years. So not even somebody, she should go to jail for twice the fucking time, or she should have to serve the rest of his 20-year sentence for doing this. No, she goes to jail for way less time than he does. And the whole documentary, they were making it seem like she was the victim. Oh, she was abused as a child. She came from a third world country where she didn't really have a family and all these terrible things. What a poor, helpless her. But of course, with men, it's abuse doesn't excuse abuse.
Well, yeah, that's because they want a reason to give a man a criminal record. No, you don't want sympathy for men. You want men to be subjugated as much as possible. That's why. Like I don't know, maybe the idea just hasn't gotten out there, but there is no benefit to putting a woman in prison. Like, I need to look this up actually. Just real quick, can criminals vote in the U.S.? Yeah, okay, so they can vote in the U.S. Maine and Vermont allow people with felony convictions to vote while in prison. So it apparently varies state to state. But at the very least, you have, in some states, the option to have your voting privileges taken away if you're a felon. So, yeah, there's a good incentive to get men who vote a certain way removed off the ballot list versus women. And that's just on the ballot. That's to say nothing of the free labor. Because good luck getting labor of any value out of convicted women. So, like I've said this a number of times. Why are men treated harsher than women when it comes to prison? Because there is more value to be extracted from a male prisoner than a female one. That's the reason. That's the reason. Like, you can give all the other societal reasons, but if you look at just the objective numbers, you get more value out of a male prisoner than a female prisoner. A female prisoner is just welfare. It's just more welfare, maybe in a shittier environment, but it's still just more welfare.
So anyway, those are just some of my pet peeves. The way we fix this, the way we get out of this is somebody's got to be doing this. I know Tommy Sotomayor does this quite a lot, where he brings out in the black community mothers who are terrible people, and that is a great service by our fellow man. So I love watching his content in the little bursts that he does. Like I don't listen to him all the time, but what I'll do is I'll have a little Tommy Sotomayor Netflix binge, and I'll watch like hours of his content, and then I'll kind of go off it for a while, and then like a couple months later listen to hours of his content. But at least he's out there saying something. So what we could do is, again, like I don't think we get to stay passive. We have to start doing something. Is we just simply point this stuff out. Don't let them say, oh, well, she's just an abuse victim. She had nowhere to go. She had to let her kids get beaten by their father or molested by their father because she couldn't do anything about it. Yes, she can.
Don't let them say, what the heck are you talking about? How can we not let people say things? What? Like, are you saying don't let them say it unchallenged? Maybe you can do that for people you interact with in the real world. But how are we supposed to do anything about the people who have all sorts of media platforms? How are we going to stop them? How are we going to not let them say something? Do you honestly think about these things that you say before you say them? I doubt it. Let's wrap this up.
If you have a mother in any situation where she's being abused and she has children and she lets the abuse happen more than once, she lets the abuse happen for a multitude of years and does nothing about it, she is just as evil as the man abusing her because she brings her kids into a situation they didn't ask for. So I will leave it at that. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And if you are new to the channel and you like this video, if you made it this far, well, you might have liked this video. So why don't you hit that subscribe button? How about the like button as well? How about you share the video if you thought?
Yeah, no, exactly. Aerodynamic and honest line. Think before you speak. I think that this guy needed to do a lot more thinking before he spoke, because he certainly doesn't seem to be. I mean, I'm off the cuff and steadily getting more intoxicated. But at the very least, if I say something stupid, I trust you guys to call me out on being stupid. And quite frankly, if I say something stupid and you guys don't call me out, I'm going to be kind of pissed at you. But as usual, this video is deleted, so you can't like his video, you can't subscribe to his channel via this video, and you can't comment below this video. So you'll have to settle for either this stream or the separate video once I clip this segment. And holy bugger. Well, we're almost at the 2-hour mark. I think this one was a little faster than the last video. So let's just get to the last 5 seconds here.
This was a particularly interesting video, and I will see you in the next one.
All right, well, I'll be seeing a lot of you in the next one after I grab another drink. And I'm starting to feel a tickle in my throat, so I really hope I'm not getting sick. But for now, we will just get that off. Sorry for flashbanging a lot of you with that brightness. We'll start composition number 220. Hopefully it's not bad. I'm going to grab a drink. I'll be right back. All right, those I don't think those were too bad. Yeah, chug chug. Seriously, I'm wondering, like, if you guys want to see like me put some kind of drink redeem, I absolutely will. That's been such. Hey, Chronic has found great success with it, so if y'all want to see me just pound back red ale, I will. But yeah, SCE, we are on the third of the three videos for this particular Red Pill Cult meeting. We are on archived video 23, Karma. I figure I should.
I want to spend some time talking about cultural appropriation today, and there's got to be a better.
Okay. So we'll just back that up for a second. So, first of all, just quick lead in. Yes, this is Think Before You Sleep, deleted archive, video number 23, Karma. I'm going to just give a little bit of a preamble thing. I do not believe in karma. I do not believe that there is any sort of higher power that is balancing out good and evil in the world through some sort of divine retribution of good or bad luck or fate or what have you. I have no faith in karma to correct things. Sure, people doing stupid, self-destructive stuff, will it bite them in the ass? Probably. But that doesn't mean that it's a guarantee. There's no guarantee of it. So, I find people who go, well, karma's going to get them in the future, I personally find them foolish. I personally find it a very foolish idea to think that the cosmos themselves are going to provide some kind of justice just because you feel that a person should suffer for what they have done. Well, let's get into it and see what Sean has to say.
I want to spend some time talking about cultural appropriation today, and there's got to be a better term for that. Well, I guess the best thing I can think of is the analogy of the melting pot versus the salad bowl. The salad bowl has a bunch of different ingredients in it. Like you could have tomato, you could have lettuce, you could have pecans, you could have some type of other seed. Now, even though they're all put together, you can clearly see where the tomato is. You can clearly see where the lettuce is. You can clearly see where maybe the fruits are, or the other types of seeds like sunflower seeds and stuff like that. But they're all in the same place. Whereas the melting pot theory is you have all these different ingredients in the same place, but if you were to look into the melting pot, you couldn't tell the individual ingredients. And so we have an idea of integrating into a single culture versus multiculturalism. And if you've studied politics long enough or history long enough, you know that the salad bowl theory does not work. Multiculturalism does not work at all. If people do not run under the same ideas, if people do not run under the same values, they will war and fight with each other. It doesn't matter about the race. The culture is what matters. I mean, white people and black people can get along. Blacks and Mexicans can get along. Asians and blacks and Asians and whites can all get along if they are under the same principles and the same ideas. Now, what fascinates me is the ideas that we can bring from other cultures. People who are not American culture, who are not Western culture as well, but they have ideas that are so good and so useful that follow truth so well that we, even though we are the dominant culture, even though the West is the dominant culture, that we will pick them up. I mean, think of it this way. Think of how powerful the American film technology is. Like, if you ever watch foreign films, they are not shit compared to American film technology. Like, they, every so often, they'll have a good one. Like, I've watched a lot of Japanese stuff, and the only Japanese movie, like live action movie I've seen that's on par with American stuff is Departures. Most of Japanese films, the acting just isn't quite up to par. It's like they're
Really? What? What era? Okay, Departures? When was that? Two 2008. Okay. Hmm. Hmm. Admittedly, not being the biggest cinephile, I couldn't say, but maybe this might have been true a while ago, But I can also say that regardless of the quality of the acting, I would say that Japanese writing in the modern day is absolutely taking America and breaking it over its knee. The quality of American writing in Hollywood has gone down the absolute shitter. So, acting? Maybe I'm biased because I like Kurosawa's work, but admittedly, that's over half a century old. I guess I can't say well enough. Like, maybe there's a cinephile in chat who can speak a little bit more to the quality of modern American acting because I'm having a hard time remembering the last time I watched an American film.
Trying to do anime acting in live action and it doesn't work. They don't understand that Marshall McLuhan thing that the medium is the message. And so it comes off very awkward and weird, whereas that movie Departures didn't seem to do that. Departures is a movie where a guy
Well, hold on. Let's back up to see what he was using as a basis for comparison.
most of Japanese films, the acting just isn't quite up to par. It's like they're trying to do anime acting in live action and it doesn't work. They don't understand that Marshall McLuhan thing that the medium is the message.
It's like they're trying to do anime acting. I'm guessing he's not going to elaborate on that. Medium is the message. Well, yeah. No, like SCE, you're right. Lots of movies made from adaptation of Japanese manga and anime. Where's the American counterpart? Oh yeah, the DCEU/MCU, and it's almost dead. Exactly. Because guess what? It's not the acting that's an issue. The acting can be pretty bad. Or at the very least, like mediocre. What really matters is the story. If the writing is bad, good acting cannot save it. Like, good writing can save bad acting. But good acting cannot save bad writing. Although, maybe I'm not the majority of the US population or the consumer of Western media. I might be completely off on this. Because I know there's a bunch of people who still watch movies. The only movie that I'm even remotely interested in watching is Cocaine Bear. And at the same time, I can't really judge a lot of Japanese acting, like voice acting, because, well, I'm not Japanese. I watch with subtitles, and it's like, yeah, the voice and emotional range seems to largely line up with what's on screen. It's acceptable to me. Maybe I could be a harsher critic if I was native Japanese and understood the language better. But just trying to judge the quality of a foreign film, I don't just like if you're not familiar enough to catch the subtle nuances. Like, can an American or a Canadian or a Westerner truly judge the quality of acting in a foreign film when they themselves aren't really aware of that particular culture? By what metric is this being judged by? Huh. Well, let's just keep going. Like, this is probably just his pre-topic ramble. But admittedly, chances are that pre-topic ramble is a more interesting topic than what he has actually planned for it. 20 minutes to go. Let's try to get through this within the next hour.
And so it comes off very awkward and weird, whereas that movie Departures didn't seem to do that. Departures is a movie where a guy learns how to do a funeral ceremony, and then he has. Well, let me just leave it at that because I was about to spoil the ending. But so it's something like, and using that same example, Japan. While Japan's film technology or live action film technology might not be that great, while other countries, if you watch any other foreign films, it might not be that great, where the acting isn't up to par, or it looks like it was filmed on like a home video camera or a cell phone or something like that. It is pretty amazing when certain types of media outside of America become popular. Like, maybe Japanese live action technology just isn't that great, but their animation technology is fantastic. I mean, anime is huge in America, despite the fact that we have all the better equipment, despite the fact that we have all the better research, because Hollywood's very, very big here. It started here, so of course. And even the invention of film technology started in America. So I've always found that fascinating that anime is so popular in America, and certainly that Japanese video games are fairly popular in America as well. So when a culture is kind of behind like that, but they can still up and compete with the dominant culture, that's always very great because it adds to everyone. We've added to their culture, like certainly America's added to Japan by even.
David Graham, Train to Busan. Yes, good acting in Korean. Actually, that reminds me. I'm going to just give a bit of a recommendation. Let me see if I remember it correctly. Yeah. Yeah. Guys, if you're in for something that is... personally, I thought it was quite well written and quite well acted. If painful. Old Boy. Korean film Old Boy. That one, like, I went into, like, that was just recommended, watched it knowing absolutely nothing about it. It left an impact. It left an impact. So there's just my bit of a recommendation today, but yeah, I don't know, like there's other films I'd watch rather than American films. So what's he talking about? The quality of the tech, the quality of the acting. Neither of those things are drawing me to American movies. And the American movies that I would be interested in watching, they're probably decades old with outdated tech. Hollywood is what witches use to cast spells. I am in no condition to dive down the supernatural rabbit hole. Like, do not ask me to start diving into the occult in the middle of this cult meeting. We are currently dissecting Think Before You Sleep. The whole occult connection to modern day civilization. That's going to be another far more research stream than this.
On a basic state, like we gave them firearms, we gave them. Actually, it might not have been America to do that, but we gave them a lot of Western technology in terms of defense. We gave them a lot of media technology. We gave them a lot of industrial technology. So we benefited them. It's nice to see a little bit of payback and ideas with things like anime and video games. But since I've been teaching yoga for almost 6 years at this point, we're getting close to that. Because I've been teaching yoga for a while, I've been.
Now, do you mean 6 years where you've been doing 1 hour a week, or 6 years where you've been doing 25 hours a week? Just because you've been doing something over the period of several years, the amount of time you spent doing it does kind of matter. So I'm sure you're including this when it was basically a once a week hobby, and the time when it was, I guess, a part-time job, as the same amount of time, as the same period of time. But that's a bit beside the point. But hey, yeah, I keep bringing up how you've been teaching yoga for a long time. I'm sure the more you say it, the more we'll believe you.
A little bit into Indian culture. Now, there's a lot of BS that's in Indian culture. There's a lot of spiritualism it's like, you're the capitalized Western industrialist, and you see someone who doesn't have all this technology, and you think, isn't that so great? Like, there's this really, if I can find this picture, I'll put it up in the video. So if I found it, it's on screen right now. But there's this picture of a bunch of kids in Africa, and they're kind of hanging their feet over the edge of a cliff, and you see this great rainforest and tropical area, and they say, those silly Americans, they don't know what real beauty is. And it's a bunch of, the noble savage, I think is the term for it. And I'm thinking, when I see that picture, when I saw this the first time, I laughed my ass off. And I was thinking, like, hey, dumbass who made this meme, you know how miserable it is in Africa? It's fucking hell there. Not only, even if you didn't have all the rampant racism that's in Africa, not just against whites, but against even other black people. Like, black people are extremely racist against other black people in Africa. You
They're also extremely racist against other black people in America, but that's a whole other discussion.
Have all these kinds of diseases that go around in the forest, like even just like
Okay, now, SCE, I know that you don't believe it, but Satanists control Hollywood and are promoting decadent morality. Now, SCE, it's not that I don't believe it. It's that I do not have the time to go into the deep discussion between the occult and the modern world. Whether or not I believe it is entirely irrelevant to whether or not I'm going to discuss it during this video. Just to be clear on that.
malaria is rampant. Like, holy shit, Africa is not a great place to live. So there's a lot of that type of thing. Well, it's like Indians, they're less technological, so they must be more spiritual. When my suspicion is if you have a very, very undeveloped society, it's likely because that society is lacking in intelligence or is lacking in good philosophy. Because that seems to be the case. And so India is not the exception to that rule. The average IQ in India is in the 80s, which is not very good. And a lot of these spiritual practices that Indians suggest is very, it's not as good as the Western science. So I think this one's popular with people who are on the left because yoga is very nihilistic. Of course, yoga says the one truth, which is life is suffering. I think that is very, very correct. But the answer to the suffering in yoga is to do nothing. It's to go into the forest, breathe and meditate, eat root vegetables, and just remove yourself from society and prepare yourself for death. Basically, it's a suicidal fantasy. And I do not.
I mean, like, yeah, like if life is suffering and the ultimate answer is to do nothing, what's the point of going out into the middle of the woods and eating root vegetables? You may as well just jump off the nearest cliff. I mean, if you're going to go with life has no inherent purpose, then yeah, like one answer is to just end it. The other answer is to create a purpose. But, you know, I suppose that creating your own purpose isn't very conducive to getting people to hold poses in very awkward positions for several minutes at a time. Anyway, keep going.
Not like that about yoga. There's a lot of good things about yoga, and there's a reason yoga came to America and became popular in America after people brought it. But there's also a lot of nihilism and a lot of, well, fuck it, let's just do nothing. Well, now that I've said something negative about yoga, let me say something positive. Because, well, they did get the life is suffering thing correct. That is absolutely correct. Life is hell. Life is painful.
Spider Spectre, we always ask who is the most advanced, but we never ask what civilization is the most happy. That is a good point because we could probably look at the West and say, hey, is the average IQ of women higher than it was a century ago? The answer is probably yes. Are women happier and more fulfilled in life than they were a century ago? The answer is probably no. Keep going.
But the answer to that is not to sit there and do nothing. The answer is not to kill yourself. The answer is not to do things that are negative. The answer is to fight against it. Fight against the suffering. Try to make things a little bit better. And then, well, hopefully you've left your generation a lot better.
What? The answer is to fight against the suffering. What would victory mean? To fight against suffering would mean that should you achieve victory, there will not be suffering. Okay, maybe people could argue this, but I'll just throw my 2 cents here. If life is suffering, give the suffering some meaning. Give it a reason. If you can't get through each day without pain, without suffering, which, let's be honest, we do have to suffer a bit each day in order to have the privilege of being able to live to the next one. So have it mean something. Don't live just for the sake of living. Try to have some reason beyond just not dying to live. CE, suffering leads to the dark side? Well, true. Well, fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. But what leads to light? What leads to the light side of the force? That may be a bit of a wider discussion, the philosophy of Star Wars. But since we've got this whole subject of the karmic wheel, again, personally, I can accept that life is going to involve suffering. Death is peace. Death is just the absence of everything for yourself. You are nothing, you feel nothing. There is no more existence, therefore there can be no more suffering. So if life is to be suffering, then you should find a bloody reason to do it. Going to the gym, best analogy I can think of off the top of my head. You don't lift the lightest weights you can at the gym. You lift fairly heavy, because it is the pain that you overcome that allows you to grow stronger and be able to withstand more. Therefore, if life is suffering, then should you not accept the suffering and see how much you can reasonably handle in order to do more so that you can overcome greater challenges? Avoiding suffering, I wouldn't see that as being beneficial. I would see suffering as a skill to train, and enduring suffering as something required to achieve greater triumphs. I don't know. Chat, you can argue with me on this. So, I think that there is a discussion there to have as to like what is the purpose of suffering and how should one adapt to the phrase life is suffering. That's just my 2 cents right there, though. Maybe I'm off on it. I'm sure someone could provide a compelling argument for another way. But let's continue for now.
Than the last generation left you off, and we just keep doing that, and we will be living with a lot less suffering. And certainly we are living with way less suffering, at least in Western cultures, actually even all over the world. Because even some of the poorest people have better technology than people had, back 1,000 years ago. Like,
Does more technology mean less suffering? I don't know if correlation does not equal causation. Also, Spider Spectre, you have scripts written out for Star Wars philosophy vids that you've never made? I'd be curious about those. I have, at the very least, a decent interest in Star Wars. Contact me on Discord. Maybe we can look into making some of those, because if they're good, wouldn't mind putting them out. Maybe get some AI Jedi to read them. Obi-Wan talks Star Wars philosophy. That could be an interesting series. Oh yeah, Matria. Does he go embrace ability for evil with this fighting the suffering? His morality seems to take like a hard reset. Like I don't really detect any consistency between the videos in terms of morals, ethics, values, principles, all that good stuff Hammerhand discusses. So I guess we just kind of have to take each video fresh and see what he says from one to one. But we'll keep going.
you can have you can be in a third world country and have a cell phone. I've been to plenty of third world countries where people carry cell phones. Or
wait, Sotnar. Also, karma is real, but it carries over across reincarnations. Feel free to disregard or not believe this. I haven't seen any evidence for that, but karma carrying across lives? I mean, at the very least, I find that more feasible than karma being something that affects you within the same lifespan due to divine will. Like, I know, I'd kind of like to think that the fly that I pulled the wings off of and then trapped inside a ball of wax so it could suffocate to death back when I was 8. I'd like to think that that was, that it had the memory of being some kind of sociopathic criminal or just a heavily abusive person that used to be a man, and that its karmic punishment was that it got to be tortured to death by a child. But that does make me feel a lot more warm fuzzies. I'm just not sure how one would be able to prove or verify that. My own 2 cents on the matter, but I can't say for sure.
You have running water and toilets and things like that, and that's, I think,
Okay, listen, Visages, have Obi-Wan preached Jesus Christ's Sermon on the Mountain for Easter? I think that would be awesome. If you could send me a link to that on Discord, I'd be curious because I can look into copying Obi-Wan's speech and Old Ben Kenobi, by the way, from the original trilogy. I'm not going to bother with any of the newer incarnations, just in case anyone's wondering. Let us continue.
that's almost all of the world now. There are very, very few places, as my understanding, that don't have those basic essentials. So I think the idea that comes out of India, that is the most popular idea, that's the most well-recognized idea in Western culture from India, is the idea of karma, which you know it as what goes around comes around. If people do bad things come back to them. And that's the kind of the core part of it, but it's not the only part of it. And I'd like to expand on our definition of karma a little bit, because I think what the Bhagavad Gita has to say about karma, or more specifically, this story it comes from called the Mahabharata, is actually very useful and very interesting. A little bit of background. I'll try to keep this short because, well, the Mahabharata is like a 1,000-page story. It's a fairly good one, but it is quite
You are 8 minutes into a 22-minute video, and I hope you had of keeping this short died 6 minutes ago. Let's keep going.
long. And so the basic idea behind this story is that there's two family members. Like you've got one side of the family, which is the Kauravas, and the other side of the family called the Pandavas. And the Pandavas were supposed to be the sons that inherited the throne, but their father didn't want to be a king, so he went to the forest and ate root vegetables and became a noble savage, I guess. And so his father's brother became the king instead, even though he was the second born. And well, that's the Kaurava family, and the forest family is the Pandavas family. Now, in India, if you have it's very set by predestined fate. Now, I don't really believe in predestiny, but certainly there are things that people are more suited for, and there are things that people are less suited for. So I think the idea still holds water, though I don't. Again, I don't like the idea of predestiny. Even if predestiny is true, I don't think we should be acting that way.
As the listening to Think Before You Sleep is nihilistic karmic suffering, and I'm not joking. And you've got him sped up. Oh yeah, we're at 1.4. 1.5 was a little too fast, I felt. But given how long it takes me to get through just one of his videos because of how much rambling he does, I had to speed him up, like just to try and get through 3 of these videos in one 3-hour meeting.
Because it tends to lead to nihilism. So what happens is that the Pandava's father dies, and when he dies, they move out of the forest and they move back to the kingdom. Now, it's a very serious thing that you follow your karmic duty. So if you're born to a certain class, it is very important that you do the duties of that class to the best of your possible ability. So if you are a king, if you're in the ruling class,
Oh, how fun. The religion reinforces the caste system of the society. I'm sure that's just purely a coincidence and not at all intentional.
it is your job to rule something. And so when the Pandavas come back, they say, okay, well, we understand that our father gave up the throne, and he said he didn't want to be a ruler, but we're a part of the ruling class, and we have to do that. Otherwise, we'll accrue bad karma, and we'll be worse off our next life. So, well, it's your kingdom. We don't care. Just give us a small village. Give us a small village with a couple people to lead, and then we'll fulfill our karmic duty. And you get your kingdom. We don't incur bad karma, and everybody's okay. And so the Kauravas, the bad guys in the story, said no. But I kind of like this idea that we're
Okay. Maybe I'm not that familiar with Indian culture, so forgive me for my ignorance on this. But did you have to be the leaders of a village? Did you have to be the like leaders in some sort of official capacity? Couldn't you just be leaders in some unofficial capacity?
Predestined to be a cuck, that's why he's no fan.
Yeah, good point, real talk, because yeah, maybe that's the case. Maybe just heck, who knows? Maybe his past life had some bad karma, and and simping for Brittany Venti is his karmic punishment for not doing shit in his past life. Like, uh, who knows? I don't know. Like, do you need to be given territory in order to be considered, like a leader for the terms of your karmic balance? I mean, okay, sure. I guess for the sake of the story, perhaps you do. But I don't think I need to necessarily be given governance over a town or a village if I was say, hey, if I was told by God that you need to be a leader, therefore go out and lead somebody, I wouldn't go, oh yeah, let me go to the local governor and declare that, hey, in order to keep my karmic balance, I need to be a village leader. So just give me something to rule over. Surely you can be a leader in some other capacity. Like, surely you don't need to be granted a position by a higher figure of government in order to fulfill a spiritual duty. Eh, I'll admit I'm largely ignorant of karma and Indian culture, so I'm open to being criticized on this. Just I find it kind of awkward. Lost Vein. Is it truly worth the average person's time thinking philosophically on concepts like those fate, karma, and suffering? Is it worth it because it makes people feel like they're extracting meaning? Huh. Well, I'm pretty sure the average person doesn't think that much on it. Most of the time, when the average person would think on something like that, it's usually because they're trying to cope with some sort of misery that has happened in their life and they're trying to extract some sort of value from it. We're trying to provide some kind of meaning for it. I mean, if I'm being completely honest, I'd question the value of the above average person thinking about that kind of stuff, or the below average person. Thinking about it, does it provide some kind of benefit? Like, there's clearly a need for human spirituality, so it must come across in some way. But if more people are thinking on this stuff and openly questioning it, I think it's probably a larger symptom of the disconnect between spirituality and culture. Like, is it really normal for so much of Western civilization to be looking to an Eastern culture and trying to extract some kind of values from their particular system? No. Like, perhaps the average person should think about it, but in relation to their culture. Like, perhaps another question would be, is it truly worth the average Christian's time to be thinking about the average Buddhist or Muslim's philosophy of karma and reincarnation? That's a deeper question. Hmm. Real names not given. Religion could be cope for life circumstances. I think it's a combination of cope for life circumstances and also guidance from lessons of the past. Like, yes, life circumstances do require one to seek out answers to questions for which there are no answers for. Why do bad things happen to good people? It's hard for the average person to accept that, sometimes just shit happens. People who do absolutely nothing wrong, who do absolutely nothing to deserve terrible circumstances, they suffer. It's not because they should, it's not because it's right. Just bad things happen to good people. It's shit luck, and people want to look for some sort of higher reason, higher order. But short of perhaps day to day decisions that could have been made differently, bad things will happen to good people. At the very least, that's just what I've found. And I mean, To quote, I believe, it wasn't Star Trek. Babylon 5. There's this one guy who said like that it was good that the universe didn't care about good and evil, because wouldn't it be so much worse if we actually deserved all the bad things that happened to us? SCE, great. You really don't want to have think before you sleep. Exclaim. Vedic text you. His ramblings are nihilistic already. You know what? Fair enough. This, like, I'll admit, like, to those of you who are looking at this and raging because Sean here is giving a completely terrible representation of Indian culture, you know what? Yeah. Like, we are here less to debate the cultural and spiritual history of India, and more so to just just absolutely roast a guy who probably doesn't understand half the shit he's talking about, if his works that we do have proper reference for are any indication. So, let's see, how much time we have left? Yeah, we got about a half hour left in the cult meeting, and we are only about halfway through this. So let's try to speed through the rest of this without going off on too many tangents.
We're designed to do something, because I think that's true about everybody. Whether it's predestined or it's done by free will, there are certain things you're good at, and there are certain things you're bad at. There are certain things that you are suited for. And if you want to do well in life, it's a good idea to find out what those things are. Maybe you take an IQ test, maybe you take a psychological temperament test like the Big Five test. Maybe you spend some time looking at the things that you enjoy and what things do you naturally like, what things are you naturally good at. Like maybe you're naturally really good with computers. So if you're naturally really good with computers, well, you shouldn't be working at like a grocery store or something like that. Or maybe you shouldn't be working with sales. You should be building new programs or making websites or playing or making video games and stuff like that. Those are types of things that would help fulfill your duty, because
Okay, it's less about like what you're good with, because like let's be like being good with computers, some kind of karmic destiny. Well, whether or not you can get a job in a particular field is more so due to the education that you have and the connections that you have, rather than any sort of karmic destiny. Like, if karma could really control whether or not you hit certain circumstances, then at the very least it could push some circumstances onto you that would actually help out. Because, like, saying, hey, you have this duty to fulfill, it's kind of vague and you're probably not going to know about it for a long time. So you better figure it out and accomplish it. Otherwise, you will suffer. Like, wasn't this the plot of like Final Fantasy like 13 or something, where you got a vague, poorly understood message from a god, and if you didn't do it, you turned into an abomination? I don't know. To the probably zero of you which played Final Fantasy 13, was that not the plot? That you're given a message by God, and if you don't fulfill it, you turn into an abomination. But if you succeed in it, then you turn into some sort of crystal statue. I don't know. I only watched Spoonie review it. I never played the bloody thing. Let's keep going.
if you don't do that, then we lose you as help. If you have the capacity to be very good with computers and you are not fulfilling that capacity, it's not just you that loses. Everybody that could benefit from trading with you loses too. And so it's this very societal thing where it's like, if you're not following your karmic duty, that has big consequences to it. And so the Pandavas see this and they say, well, we need to lead something because that's our role. So we'll even just take a small village. And for me, I've kind of been moving away from yoga because it seems to be just like, if you want to be an actor, you're not going to be an actor unless you live in the correct place.
So you start to move away from being a vegan. Then you start to move away from yoga. Next, you're going to move away from MGTOW. I'm starting to see a pattern here.
You're not going to be a musician unless you live in the correct place. So if you want to be a musician, but you live in South Dakota, you're not going to be able to make a living off of that. So people certainly might enjoy your content. They might like listening to you, but you're not going to get enough people who are interested in music to pay you a living wage, or a living salary, or a...
All right. Well, most people seem to be in at least somewhat agreement that was the plot of Final Fantasy 13. Also, for no reason, hey, at the very least, I'd recommend Final Fantasy 6. Like, I can understand not being a fan of some of the more recent ones, but Final Fantasy 6 was pretty bloody good. So, But you know, if you're just not much for that particular genre, not much I can do. But Final Fantasy VI was good and had a lot of good story points, good characters, and good music. So, my 2 cents there. Oh, Lost Vein. Does the concept of human spirituality stem from the fear of death? It's religion to make people feel better about dying. If so, the talk of higher forces is just cope, isn't it? I think that death just becomes a part of spirituality due to the indecipherable nature of it. But I think that it's always just been a part of it and largely trying to understand some of the bigger questions. But I do think that it goes beyond just humans coping with death. And it's more so humans trying to understand things they do not. And what happens after death is something that's going to be common. Well, I guess commonly ambiguous, perhaps. Commonly not understood, commonly uncertain. So that's why it keeps popping up and why you get such disparate understandings. But I think that life after death, or what happens after death, is only a part of spirituality. It is not the core reason. Couldn't say for sure, though, but that's my 2 cents. Let's keep going.
That's comfortable, basically. Like, you're not going to become a big pop band if you're living in the middle of nowhere. And so yoga is kind of like that too, but very specifically, since yoga is a smaller market than music, you have 2 places you can live in America. Maybe there's a couple others, but there's not very many. You've got New York and very specifically Los Angeles. And I have been trying to avoid that for the past 5 or 6 years that I've been teaching yoga because Los Angeles is kind of a big shithole. And Los Angeles is a big area of leftism. And particularly a lot of people who do yoga would not appreciate the values that I talk about in class. Now, I hide the values very, very well. Like if I'm going to talk about cultural appropriation.
What the fuck are you doing talking about values during yoga? What? Okay, look. If I was to go to yoga class, I am not there to hear about the values of my teacher. I learned from karate that the values that you are made to spout during class are not regarded by the teachers. So, as a grown ass adult, screw the values you're trying to pass on via yoga. Just get me to stay in the pose that is uncomfortable for an extended period of time and how long to do it. You show me the pose and how long I'm supposed to be able to do it for. That's your job as a teacher. Waxing about your philosophy to me, I'm sorry, that is not why I attend your freaking bullshit Tai Chi, okay? I'm there to learn the poses so I can put my body in weird positions and gain some kind of strength or flexibility from them. Or relax or whatever. I'm not here for a lecture from some bullshit white westerner about Indian culture that he barely understands.
I'll just talk about the basics behind that idea, and I won't ever mention the word. And you can tell when people are basically lying about what's right and are actually preaching truth is that people who are hearing the correct ideas, people who totally disagree with the idea of free markets, will respond to these ideas and respond to them well. Now, they'll put a social shift on it, but if you look at it critically, socialism is what deters.
Oh, yay. The anti-capitalists respond well to nihilism. What a surprise.
Deteriorates the good ideas, and free markets are what build up the good ideas. Of course, free markets aren't perfect, but they're a lot more perfect than socialism. And so I hide the ideas that way. But for the most part, like, it's not going as I would like. It's not going as I would like. And so I figured what I'm going to do is I'm going to take away the skills that I have from yoga. Like, I got a lot of public speaking practice from teaching yoga that I can use for other skills. And I specifically made my classes that way because not most yoga teachers can teach cues. Like, they can tell you how to walk into a pose, or they can tell you how to go into a pose, but they can't really talk. They can't tell you about, well, they can't even talk like this, like I'm talking right now. A lot of times, teachers want to say something outside of what their regular script is, because I can memorize how to describe a pose, and I just use the same script over and over again for every class. But when they go outside of their script, a lot of them, they'll bring like a notebook or like a poem, and they'll read like 4 lines out of that poem, and they couldn't even memorize the lines. That takes about maybe 20 seconds to deliver, or maybe 10 seconds to deliver. So most yoga teachers don't have public speaking skills, but I specifically designed my classes around that because I figured I'd be using that skill somewhere else. And I look at the idea of karma, and I look at the idea that the Pandavas pleaded to the Kauravas to give them, please just give us a small kingdom. Please just let us do our duty, and we'll be fine. And so I've kind of said that to myself, whereas it will probably take me a while to make the same amount of money on YouTube that I make doing yoga. Now, again, I don't make a shitload of money doing yoga. I make a very, very average amount, but I do survive. But it's not enough to make me comfortable. So what I've done is say, okay, I know here's the skills I have. I have Japanese, and I'm getting fairly good at that, actually. I've been doing pretty well.
You're good at Japanese, yet I haven't heard you say anything remotely related to Japanese in the 20 some odd videos I've reviewed of yours. Who knows? Maybe somewhere in the next 100 videos you'll actually say something remotely relevant to Japanese. But this is not about Japan. Right now you're talking about Indian culture. Maybe you should have spent more time learning how to speak, what, Punjabi? I'll admit, I'm not really an expert in this, but maybe you should have learned more to speak about India and how to understand the Indian language if you're going to teach some kind of Indian yoga instruction and speak about Indian philosophy than Japanese. Let us keep going. Holy bugger.
Without any sort of subtitling on watching different Japanese shows. I've been doing really well with playing games. I've been doing really, really well with speaking to friends. And so I've gotten pretty good at that. Maybe about 2 years or so, I'll be good enough to interpret. Interpreting makes a shitload of money. But the problem is interpreting.
Apparently that didn't follow through because you're still dependent on YouTube for money. So apparently you didn't get that good after 2 years because it's been 4 years and you're still relying on YouTube for your bread and butter.
It's not very fulfilling to me. It's not my duty. Well, it certainly helps with a valuable skill, but it's not what I'm best at. It's not what I'm here for. I'm here for this. I'm here for what you're listening right now, what you're listening to right now. But the problem is very likely
you're here for this. You truly believe that your cosmic destiny is to talk about this kind of stuff on YouTube. What drugs are you taking that make you think that? You know, just so I can avoid them because they clearly make you insane.
YouTube won't make as much money for a while. YouTube is not going to produce me, $200,000 a year or $100,000 a year as you'd make as an interpreter. But it can't produce me.
August Lion, I watched every single one of his videos over the years until recently. Spoiler alert, he never says anything relevant about his Japanese studies. Not really surprising. But thanks for the heads up. Jeez. I'm going to have to boost the physics on this model so that I can shake my head with the proper amount of shaking, because I just don't think this model has the capability to emphasize how much I'm just shaking my head in disappointment. I guess I'll have to settle for this.
People to listen. It can't produce me that kingdom that I need to rule, that small village that I have to get over, like the Pandavas. And even right now, even though my view counts are not very high, so this video will probably get about maybe 10 to 30 views within the first 3 or 4 days. That 10 to 30 views, if I had that same type of value and viewership in a yoga class, that'd be huge.
10 to 30 views in the first 30 days? Motherfucker, I got 30 people watching me tear you apart right now. I don't know how small his channel must have been at the time, but I got now 29, but I got 30 of you buggers watching me right now tear this guy a new orifice. So, hey, thank you. I hope this is entertaining. Because I need alcohol to get through the lot of these. So let's keep going.
My average class is about 30 people per class. And if it gets a little bit low, maybe it's about 15 or so. And so just as a beginning YouTuber, I'm nowhere near where I could be on YouTube. Just as a beginning YouTuber, I'm already getting this almost the same. And I'm getting more exposure in my classes right now, but it won't be very long before I get double the exposure. And it won't be very long before I get 10 times the exposure. And it won't be very long before I get 100 times the exposure that I would get in a class. Even though I'm not producing this much money, I get the important part, which is people are listening to good philosophy and people are trying to make themselves better. That's all I really want.
You call what you say good philosophy. By what measurement do you say your philosophy is good? I want to try to wrap this up. 6 minutes to go. Jeez. Freaking 14 minutes to go. All right. I'll try not to interrupt as much so we get through this before our 3 hour time limit.
And so that's the Eastern style of karma. The Eastern style of karma is that you have something that you're going to be good at, that you're destined to do. Again, I think this is free will. I think you have the right to choose what you're going to do as opposed to being decided by God. And it is your goal to do that as well as you can without being super attached to the results. So if things go very, very poorly, you're not saying, oh, this is bullshit. I hate this. I'm not making $1,000 a day off of YouTube or whatever it is. I quit. So you don't want to be attached like that. But you also don't want to be overly attached to good results, because good results can make you very arrogant. They can make you very, they can give you a bloated ego, and that's not good either. So
you might want to listen to yourself here. Getting a bloated ego is not very good either. Actually succeeding is not very good, because you can get a bloated ego. Once again, Sean of the past giving advice to Sean of the present that I'm sure Sean of the present would ignore and just call people a hater for. Sorry, let's keep going.
You do what you're supposed to be doing without super high attachment to the results. Yeah, you should have some attachment to the results, because you could be doing a really shitty job, and it could be the fact that you need to improve, or any other reason that you might need to be focused on the results. But for the most part, over attachment to those things is not a good idea. The Western idea of karma, because this is a part of karma too. So the karmic cycle.
Professor E, Gray, you have respectability because unlike some folks, you didn't buy up your sub counts. Honestly, I wouldn't even know how to do it, and like the sub counts, like, they're nice. It's a metric to see that how things are progressing. But I understand that I'm in a very niche part of YouTube. I do not expect to ever get to something like 6 or 7 figures. I'm a very niche market. All I can really do is just judge my chat in the comments by, hey, am I providing content that this group enjoys? What metrics can I improve on? And provide some more entertainment, and maybe attract some other people that would be interested in my content to join in and take a look. I'm sure there's better ways to do it by some metrics, but I don't know them, and I kind of don't care to know them. I'm not doing this to make a living off of YouTube. I'm doing this because it's interesting and I enjoy entertaining you guys. So I hope you enjoy it and that you're finding this content, if not valuable, at the very least, a worthwhile use of your time. Let's try to wrap this up as soon as we can. I'm sorry for rotting all your brain cells listening to this.
For yoga or for Indian religion is that you do things in this life that are good. You will live on a higher level the next life you're in. So if you were a poor person in your current life and you are just like the Mother Teresa, the saint, you might be a successful businessman in your next life, and you just kind of keep working up from there. If you do bad things, you'll be worse. But the idea behind that is that there's no such thing as good or bad karma, because in yoga they say all karma is bad karma because you still have to suffer. You still have to be born, suffer, and die. Now that's a very negative message, but the parts are correct. I don't think the
I mean, if I were to counter this, I'd point to the Sephiroth or the Tree of Life. Because that one where it's been a while, but my understanding was that every reincarnation, every lifetime, you're meant to learn a certain lesson. And when you learn that lesson, you ascend up to the next level of the Tree of Life until eventually you reach the top. But it's been a long time since I studied that, so maybe I'm off on that. But that's a side tangent. Let's keep going.
part about striving towards to not be alive, because that's really what you want to do. You want to practice a karma. You want to practice life without attachment to the results, so that way you live the perfect life. And once you live the perfect life, after how many reincarnation cycles you need to do that to get there, you will eventually.
What is the perfect life? Life without desire? Wait, what? Again, he's probably not the best understanding of Indian philosophy, but he keeps throwing out terms like good and evil and perfection without really defining what those are. So I can't even criticize someone who doesn't define their terms. It would be like someone who said, hey, we all need to live by the principle of. It's like, okay, I could maybe try to live by the principle of. Doesn't mean I understand what the hell you're talking about.
And not be born again,
Why, yes, I do speak Yog-Sothoth. How did you know?
and you will be united with God in eternal happiness, or whatever they say. Now, I don't think that's exactly right on a practical standpoint. But what is correct is the good and bad part. What is correct is that if you do good things will happen to you. If you do bad things will happen to you.
What is good? What is bad? Please define your terms and what the hell they mean.
But in yoga, it's in the next life. But I think people have attached to that idea in Western culture because it's true in this life. If you do bad things, there's another idea called the law of attraction. Now, the law of attraction, the way it's applied, is very, very bullshit. A lot of times people use that law of attraction to, I've got this problem I really want to avoid, so I'm going to law of attraction my way into denial of the problem. So I don't agree with that entirely, but that law of attraction idea is very, very popular, and there's a reason it's popular. It's because parts of it are correct. Like, I don't really like Marxism, but Marxism is popular because Marxism is correct in saying that free markets produce mass amounts of disparity. And disparity doesn't matter economically, but what it does matter is the sexual market. And so that's very correct, and it's a problem with free markets that has to be fixed.
Really? The free market needs to be fixed because there's disparity. Because some people succeed and some people fail. That is a problem. Well, guess what the free market is in animal society? Some shit lives to reproduce, the rest dies because it can't. Like, it's called natural selection. It's called evolution. There is nothing wrong with the majority of the population either dying or failing to reproduce. That's life. That is how nature works. That is how the majority of species have achieved their current form. Let's wrap this up.
I think the MGTOW channels are doing quite a good job. We probably can just fix this problem with technology. We can fix it with sex robots. We can fix it with artificial wombs. I've already made an episode about that, so I won't talk too much more about that. So the idea is correct. The idea of law of attraction is partially correct, whereas if you do good things, people notice you doing good things. Hey, you really helped me out here. I'd like to return the favor.
Guys, seriously, how many times have you encountered someone who was like, oh, hey, you did good for me in the past, so I'd like to return the favor and do good for you? Like, I don't trust in that. Like, if I do good things for other people, I do not expect shit in return. I expect that if someone is accustomed to me doing good things for them, they're just going to expect me to keep doing good things for them without any sort of compensation. Wrap this up, please. Freaking 2.5 minutes to go and then we're done.
Something like that. Whereas if you do bad things, it's like, well, you really fucked me over. Well, not only am I going, if you fuck someone over up well enough, they will not only not talk to you, but they might make that worse. They might actively make it their goal to harm you. And so if you're always doing things like this, of course, tons of bad things are going to happen to you. However, if you flip it around, if you're always doing good things for other people, if you're always doing good things for yourself, it is only a matter of time before those good things come back to you. And that's the idea that people are getting onto. That's the idea of why karma is popular in America, is because that very universal truth. Do good things will happen to you. Do bad things and bad things will happen to you.
No, that's not true. Fucking bad people have good things happen to them. Good people have bad things happen to them. Just because you act in a way that you think is good or bad does not mean that necessarily good or bad things will happen to you. Just that isn't how life works. That isn't how reality works. Right now, there is someone who I absolutely fucking despise, who I think deserves absolutely fucking nothing and contributes no value. He's probably making more money than I am, living off Canadian welfare. Is that karma? Look, his life fucking sucks outside of that, but if he don't care, then what the hell does it matter what I think of his life? I got no faith in karma to do shit. And this idea that if you do good or bad things, you'll get it returned? No. No, I'll repeat it again. Bad things happen to good people. Good things happen to bad people. Life is unfair. Accept it.
And so I'd like to add on more to that. And I think when we appropriate these ideas, when we take all the great parts of different cultures, like maybe India doesn't have much on America, but at least they got that right. And so let's take the one thing they got right and apply it to our culture, and let's make our culture even better. Let's take the one thing that Japan got right and make our culture better. Let's take the one thing that China, let's take the one thing that the European countries got correct, and let's add them to our culture. So we had this super culture, and let's let them do that too, because that's how you make things right. You do the melting pot theory. You take all the best parts of whatever you're.
Yes, because Europe is known for its massive melting pot, not at all for its cultural disparity, which is causing a shit ton of problems in it right now. Yeah, let's follow the European model. Jesus Christ. Almost done. Almost done.
Doing and put them all into one super culture. And then, of course, you have a massively thriving society. Like, we're not even doing that well. Things are not even running that efficiently. We're still doing better than everybody else. So there must be something that's working here. Anyway, I will leave it at that. Karma is about, good things and bad things. What goes around comes around. It's also about your specific duty. And I think that's a very important idea. Find out what you're supposed to be doing and then do it. It doesn't matter if it's economically viable. Certainly, for a while, sometimes things are you got to.
Don't do what's economically viable because it's apparently your spiritual duty. Look, when I am given a message by something that I can only perceive as a deity to do something, okay, I'll listen. But if I am supposed to try and interpret what is my divine duty by just kind of guessing from the various influences in life, then no. No. That is not divine duty. That is me making a best estimate and trying to justify it. Just damn. Like this. Let's wrap this up. Let's just wrap this up.
Sometimes you got to go to college for a little bit and waste some money in college, and then you come out as a doctor, or you come out as a computer programmer, you come out as whatever. You might have to do that. So you might have to work somewhere else a little while. But for the most part, as long as you're guided by doing good things and guided by avoiding bad things when necessary, which is most of the time, and you're guided towards what's the most valuable thing you could.
Yes, guided to do good things and guided to avoid bad things. It's guided by what? By what? What is guiding you to pursue good things and avoid bad things? Aside from what? The easiest path in your life? Take the path of least resistance, except where you need to take resistance to meet the other path. What the? How can this sounds stupid to me? Please, could someone in chat please explain what I'm not getting out of this? Because this just sounds like a bunch of bullshit gobbledygook.
You could possibly produce for society, you're going to end up doing very well. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks again for listening. If you are new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. How about the like button as well? How about throw a comment in the comment section if you have anything to say about this video? Or, I don't know, maybe you had some other video and you forgot what it was. So you comment on this video. What was said in that video? I don't really care. Do something. Anyway, thanks again, and I will see you in the next one.
Well, no, he won't, because he deleted this video too. So I'm going to try to get these videos up as soon as possible. Like, separate them out. I was going to do more refined editing, but I probably don't have the time to do it, so I'll try to chop up the segments. Heck, like, subscribe, whatever the heck you want to do. Personally, I've had a bunch of questions during this video, and if someone's got some sort of decent explanation, please comment below. Because half of this just sounds like bullshit, and the other half just sounds like rambling. So, I don't know. It's freaking weird. Anyway, we are about at the 3-hour mark, so I'm just going to play the ending scene right now. I think Yeetus is going to go live in a bit, and then Chronic's going to go live shortly after. So, thank y'all for tuning in to the Red Pill Cult meeting. Oh, this took way longer than I would have liked it to, and we were playing at fast speed too. Y'all have a good night and a good weekend. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow. Depends on my schedule. Peace out, Warband. I apologize for the brain rot.